sack of shitty meat like dumplings. Boy, I don't wear Gucci, still classy, but rotten like blue cheese. We about to make a movie with a handheld Sony, puffing on a Lucy, cooking the dumplings all day. This is the only thing I say when I'm not my business. Get the fuck out of my kitchen. I'm cooking up a storm, boy, none of that beef shit. They say I'm the man in your nightmares. Your girl in the bedroom, they're right there. I'm high on the weed and the Zanny. I find it uncanny, there's so much punani. They found me in the lab doing stem cell research. I was trying to grow you some balls. The police came, but I explained about your bitch, and now they want to pitch in and support the cause. Hate my ways, that's a personal issue. Cause you think about me, put down the tissue. Ew. Why you still yapping at me? Didn't mommy tell you not to converse with a stranger? Are you crying in the stall with a belt and a razor? Are you really that mad or just a bad imitator? Oh, cause I never heard of your dumb ass. Nope. Go fuck yourself in the mouth with a taser. Yeah. Cause I'm cooking all the dumplings. 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 One bad bitch, go. 3 bad bitches, putting hands on the stove. Making home movies with a handful of stove. I'm cooking all the dumplings.
X gon' give it to you. Fuck, wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock, open up the door and spread. With the non-stop pop-up stainless steel. Go hard, getting busy with it. But I got such a good heart that I make the motherfucker wonder if you dare. Damn right, and I do it again. Yeah, I am like so. Got to win. Break bread with the enemy. No matter how many caps I break bread, well, I'll break when you sending me. You motherfuckers never wanted nothing but your life saved. Bitch, that's on the life thing. I'm getting down, down. Get niggas set free. So won't be the one ending up on the deep bitch, please. The only thing you can steal came out the plate. Stay out my way. Motherfucker gonna rock. We gonna roll. We let it pop. Don't let it go. X gon' give it to you. We gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you. We gon' give it to you. We gonna rock. We gonna roll. We let it pop. Don't let it go. X gon' give it to you. We gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you. We gon' give it to you. Ain't never gave nothing to me. Every time I turn around, cats got their hands out wanting something from me. I ain't got it, so you can't get it. Let's leave it at that, cause I ain't with it. Hit it with full strength. I'm a jail nigga, so I face the world like an earl in the bullpen. You against me against you. Whatever, whenever, nigga, fuck you gon' do. I'm a Wolverine, she's COVID. And the nigga that you know, you chill. Come back and hit the streets open. I've been doing this for 19 years. Niggas wanna fight me, fight these tears. I put in work and it's all for the kids. But these cats done forgot what work is. They don't know who we be looking, but they don't know who they see. Cause we gonna rock, we gonna roll. We let it pop, don't let it go. X gon' give it to you, he gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you, he gon' give it to you. We gonna rock, we gonna roll. We let it pop, don't let it go. X gon' give it to you, he gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you, he gon' give it to you. Hey yo, where my niggas at? I know I got them down in the greens, give them love and they give it back. Talk too much for too long. Don't give up, you're too strong. Love to the wild, wild hunters. Shout out to niggas that done it. And it ain't even about the dough. It's about getting down what you stand for, yo. For real. We gonna rock, we gonna roll. We let it pop, don't let it go. Come on, X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it to you. We gonna rock, we gonna roll. We let it pop, don't let it go. Come on, X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it to you. We gonna rock, we gonna roll. We let it pop, don't let it go. Come on, X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it to you.
It's almost the same now. Storytelling and coming home. As long as I can. My answers in my family know who's first. It's all about shit.
But yeah, we have a little bit of a zombie outbreak and we're trying to stop it. Hello. Hello.
Could you say hello like Winwood?
Hello. 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 Hello.
Stay in the shower, you bitch. I'll fucking kill you and your family.
Video games, guys. Video games.
Yeah.
I swear I found a live hopping in a racer in the dumpster. That's great.
Well, I found a house I can actually stay in.
Thing I spawned in. Oh fuck.
What's this?
Wait, I still need to tweet about this. That's right.
Huh. I'm gonna test to see if the water in the house is safe.
It should be.
Turn to go to news station. Wait, what's pause TV? Please tell me it involves cats.
I need to turn you guys up because you guys are quiet.
Well, we don't want to attract zombies.
I swear, I gotta.
Oh, there's a shit.
So I have a pistol. I just don't have a weapon. I don't have any mouse. That sucks.
Alright, note to self, fences are the worst thing in this game, because you have to go walk all the way around the fence. Can't fault or anything.
Alright, drink water. Remember,
How do I drink water again?
you just have to
Right
adjust
click
it
on it.
automatically.
And
Hey, I'm in the crowbar. Get up.
So how are we gonna find each other exactly?
I don't know.
I've been trying to drink and it still says I'm overheated.
you gotta take
You
clothes
might.
off.
You're wearing. That means you have too much shit.
How do I check my status? Like,
You have to take off your clothes, Hood. Because I think you said you picked a sweater as your spawning clothes.
I see.
You can rip your clothing. I don't know if that actually helps it or not, though.
Well, I'm running around shirtless.
Your butt. Pants. I really don't need pants.
Huh, this is a nice little suburban
Alright,
home.
note to self, ripping your clothing just ruins it.
Turns it. You can turn it
What'd
into
you
fat
expect?
sheets.
I thought it would rip it to make it a little bit more breathable, like turn it into a fucking tank top or some shit.
Maybe in your universe.
So now I'm just a shirtless man running around.
Well, might as well fucking read some
That
books
means
while I'm
Grim and
stuck
Benny
here.
will find me quicker.
Oh, I just found a door that was open.
I'll probably need some help in a bit.
Wait, no, you found a door that's open? Describe the neighborhood you're in.
No, it's. Okay, I'm just, I don't know, I'm just. Right, keep running.
Oh, okay, we might be next to each other, but okay, man,
I
whatever.
see a white and green house.
Alright, my primary weapon's a fucking can opener.
Open door, open please. Windows open. Anything?
Oh
Fucking
shit,
goddamn.
okay, I did not expect that to happen.
How do I change
What?
the camera angle again?
You
You
really
can't.
Can't.
You're
You
stuck.
can
Like...
zoom in and zoom out, that's all you can do.
Alright, time to read a book, I guess.
I can already tell I'm gonna be hoarded here in a minute.
I'm in like not quite cottages, but
I'm in like the suburbs.
Oh
Whole
shit, I'm
bunch
in a
of-
supermart.
Too complicated for me. I don't get it. I'm stupid, apparently. I'm a stupid fucking idiot who doesn't know anything, and I'm gonna go to another house, I guess.
Oh fuck me.
Unpleasantly hot. Consider taking off clothes. I swear to God, what does this game want me to do? Run around naked?
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm stuck in the manager's office of a grocery store that's.
Grim, you're gonna have to actually take off your fucking clothes. I
This
mean,
is actually this is accurate to my real life.
also if you're inside a house, Grim, it probably gets a little bit too hot in there as well.
I'm outside and I'm literally naked right now.
Maybe I should.
I surprisingly
fucking
have not taken damage yet, so that's good. Can I go through the glass? Nope, only zombies can do that apparently.
You should be able to go through glass.
Oh, cool, it's shotgun shells. Too bad I don't have a shotgun.
Alright, in case anybody's looking to go scavenging at the supermarket, it's fucking overrun.
I mean,
Thanks
that's
to
how.
me.
Oh, okay. It was probably gonna blame it on something else, but I guess Jamal's just an asshole.
No, they're
and
having a
ruins
2-day
everything.
sale. Fucking Pepsi cubes are 2 for $12.
Why are you doing this?
Carpentry
shit?
for beginners.
I don't need a blouse. Also, Grimmon, if you're over encumbered, it might also cause you to get
Oh, I'm in
Yeah.
a church now.
Can't remember how I attack again.
Hold right click.
What? Right click?
Hold right click and then left click when you're on them.
I saw the
Does anybody
CD.
have
what
a
the fuck?
general idea of where they are?
No clue.
No,
Wonderful.
I'm in the suburbs right now. I see lots of white generic houses that are pretty fucking small, actually.
Yeah, I'm in
There's
a
still- there's still
suburbs kind
power?
of area as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
There's
there's,
I am in
there's
the
still
suburbs.
power and there's still running water.
the apocalypse just started, my dude.
I am slightly panicked because a horde is after me.
Who fucking locks
At least-
these goddamn doors if they're dying?
They probably lock their doors because they're dying.
Yeah, touche, I guess.
You fucking... Oh, there's zombies in that house. How about we don't go in? I'm thinking they're mailbox.
It's just like Daisy
Yeah,
all
dead body.
over again.
Anyone kill a zombie recently?
Yes.
No.
I didn't do shit.
Where are you at, Noob?
I see 2 zombies are dead. They're going
Wait,
up towards.
stay in that house.
I mean, which one? There's a blue, there's a white one, and there's like a brown one.
Stay in the house that you're in right now.
I'm one of the white one. The door's locked. When is that though?
So wait, you said you found 2 dead bodies, correct?
Yes. Yep. It's a. Or is it is a body with bleach just laying on it.
Okay, I think you're in the house I was literally just in.
I found a crowbar, but for some reason it's.
Noob, hit Q
it's
really
bad.
quick.
What?
Hit Q, Noob.
So I was doing the tutorial and I'm like stuck.
What do you mean?
I
You
can't
beating a lady or something, or beating a zombie?
No, my character can't move.
I don't know.
What does it say?
So Noob, I don't know where you are right now, I guess. I lost the house I was literally just in.
It's fun.
Is there a map or anything?
No.
Oh, let's go. Alright, let's get open the door. It's time to leave his house.
Man searches home and oh shit.
I just ate a dead mouse. Lovely.
Isn't it
Do it
nutritious?
again.
Yeah, bakery. As a zippy.
And my kitchen knife has just broke.
Can't help you there. Can't help you there, my friend.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Oh well, I crippled the zombie enough that they no longer running towards me.
Oh no, this is
I
not
think
good.
I think I found the rich neighborhood with like big ass
that's not good.
fence.
I'm in there.
Wait, are there hedge fences kind of things?
There's just I can't tell. There's a huge.
Oh
ass
my
fence.
god! So I'm in a
'Cause,
two-lane.
like, I'm in like a
traffic.
neighborhood that has like double-story houses and shit like that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's the
so am
place.
I.
I need to take a
Shit,
break
together.
now. My character's overexerted.
My character is feeling peckish.
Yeah, I'm peckish as
should-
well, and I'm also unpleasantly hot.
I think we all are.
I thought this
Pretty hot
blouse
today.
would be good.
Take
What
off your
is-
shirt.
Yeah, what is with this game
This
and
blouse.
us being
You're in Kentucky. I found a church.
Like how the zombies are just head.
Okay, if someone's in the rich neighborhood, I'm at the Corman Medical building. Oh, there's fucking zombies in it.
I know where you are.
Yeah, I'm right in front of it, so I'm gonna stay close to that. Okay.
So what's the end? What's the end goal of this?
Survive.
Survive.
There is no end
Well,
goal.
like, can you like build
No, there's
places?
no winning. Yeah, you
Oh!
can build places, but it doesn't matter. There's zombies. Eventually, you're gonna run out of food. and die.
So I'll try to head towards you, but I'm also smack dab in the middle of a bunch of zombies, and I have no weapons. So if you see a man running down the street with a fan following after him, I mean, you know, it's not Jamal. It's gonna be.
There's all kinds of.
Okay, I'm just in the house to the south, southeast of it.
Heading there.
It says use RMB. What's RMB?
Hold down
Right
right
mouse
mouse.
button.
Right mouse button.
No. Okay.
Let's rest.
If
I
you're
guess.
in the
found-
south house,
I
you
just
might be
found
attracting
a-
a horde.
A logging company.
Yeah, I know.
I found the church and I'm leaving the church. It says God save us. Heading towards
Oh
Rich
shit!
neighborhood.
There's fucking zombies in the bathroom.
There's always a zombie in the bathroom, by the way. That seems to be where most people die in this fucking universe.
They're always just pooping.
Okay, so I have my eyes out in the medical building, so if you get to the front of that.
Alright.
Is this impossible to hop a fence in this fucking game?
Yes. You can disassemble a fence if you have the proper tools.
So, Courtman Medical?
Yeah.
I'm right in front of it.
Okay. Oh, I see you.
Wait, don't I have a fucking can over? That was my fucking primary weapon there for a minute.
Hello.
It's not actually
Hello.
a weapon you can use.
Give me weapon.
Yeah, but
one
I
second,
wanna
one
open
second.
up. a
Actually,
thing
there's a
of
frying
canned
pan
chili.
inside this house here.
Alright, I'm in the rich neighborhood.
Wait,
It's in the kitchen.
Alright.
I cleared it out, so the house is clear.
So,
what happened to all my shit?
how do I kill this zombie?
You hold down right click and then smack
The
left
longer you
click.
hold it down, the more damage you do, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So don't just keep fucking spamming it. Do that when they fall down on the ground. Spam it, because you'll bust their head and kill them. Oh, I need
I'm
fucking
just
bandages.
standing here holding right click and then I left click.
There's one
Yes.
at the door.
Yeah, oh, I'm fucking in need of... Okay, killed it. One sec.
I've hit this zombie like a dozen times though.
That's normal.
I lost my fucking can opener.
One second, I'm applying bandages. Oh, fuck. Okay, time to rip up my fucking...
It's a really
I'm feeling
crunchy fucking
hungry
banana.
and I'm fairly heavy loaded, so. I do not like that.
Oh, my
Alright, I
kitchen
guess I
knife's
have to take off my
broken.
fucking pants as well. Alright, there we go. Now I'm no
I
longer
hit
on
this zombie like 30 times and there's a giant puddle of blood on the ground now. It's
Is
not-
there no actual fucking music that plays on this game?
Occasionally,
Yeah, there is.
It's like Minecraft music.
yeah. And to answer your question, Benny, I'm not too sure. It should work just fine, but I mean, I haven't replayed this
You
game.
okay?
Yet.
Zombie in here.
Alright, I'm gonna see if I can
Okay, you
find
got
it. Grim and Andy.
Sorry, I guess I didn't clear that room out. I didn't see it.
Supposed to do a 5-point room scan, Andar.
Sorry, I was preoccupied with 3 zombies in the fucking bathroom.
And I have a question for you.
What?
Which direction is the medical center? Should I head towards the center of the rich town?
I think so, yeah.
I'm gonna open this door because there's probably something in this room.
Okay.
How do you eat half of a life
So be prepared. You have the actual weapon.
Half
so.
of a what?
A
I think
lollipop.
Whoa,
this
what
zombie
happened?
bugged.
I told you.
They like broke through a window and they're like stuck next to the window.
Oh, I see a house that says for sale.
Yeah, that's close.
Which direction from there?
There's actually a lot of houses there for sale.
Where did they
Alright,
break it from?
You know, the real estate market in the zombie apocalypse is pretty booming.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked. Oh, it's
Okay.
the opposite tragedy.
Oh,
So if anyone finds a logging company, please tell me, because that's where I am.
I found a convenience
Is there
store.
is there ways to kind of like rest? Is that a thing?
Oh, I found the medical center. Guys, the
yeah,
medical
there's
center.
you gotta find a bed to rest
Oh, I
at.
can't just sit on the ground.
Where are you
No,
guys?
that's not immersive. It does.
So you're at the medical center? We're at the building to the southeast of that immediately. Like we can see the front. We're
Put
standing
the
in front of
corpses
the door
in
and the window.
here.
We can move corpses?
Yeah, right click on them.
That's me, you idiot. Oh, at least you don't have to worry about PvP. Okay, how do you drop them?
Yeah, they're about made to equip. You learned one here.
Just one.
Our weapons are really bad.
I have a hammer. I'll fix it.
Best.
God damn it! All I find is logs. I can't
Oh,
find anything
shit.
else.
Oh shit, you better get inside. There's like fucking 5 zombies at the medical place.
Well, can we make more blinds for this window? Do we
No.
need
Okay,
more
I'm
benches?
removing the broken glass from the window here. So now we can jump through it and not die.
Come on.
What's
If I
through
take
this
it-
door in the bathroom? There's something behind there.
Oh, there's a fucking person!
In a zombie.
Yeah.
Woo. Alright, I'm gonna close the curtains here.
Curtains for you.
jump around this naked with.
Where's the crafting menu?
Okay, I gotta rest for a bit to try and heal my injuries and shit like that. So.
Sure thing.
Directly into my mouth.
Yeah.
So, I think the tutorial glitched on me. Is there any way to skip it?
What does it say? What's the next thing I say? What does it say?
Well, it just said kill the zombie, and I
Stand in the fucking square that's slightly off colored.
Really?
What the fuck?
I
This is
swung and hit
dead.
the zombie so much my weapon broke.
I died!
How'd you die?
I don't know. Is there a zombie in the room with me?
You're a zombie! No, just lock. We'll close both these doors. He's not in here.
I gotta kill Andar.
Oh god!
I gotta kill Andar.
Gotta kill that there.
Oh god!
I'll be taking this crowbar.
You had a crowbar?
That's yeah, and a kitchen knife that broke. I got
have
a lot
a
of shit.
crowbar.
Guys.
Well then,
I
goodbye.
have 12
Grandma.
shotgun shells.
Grandma, I'm not feeling safe.
Fucking as soon as we catch up, I rest and then I die.
You bled to death.
We had the disease.
A disease.
Can't hit each other.
So, Grandma, we'll live here for a bit.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm in the
Shit.
same rich
Can
neighborhood
we
as you
can we like
guys.
move Andar's body into a dignified position?
No, fuck it, leave him.
All right.
Sorry,
How
never.
wait.
rude.
I can disassemble his. Oh,
Corpse.
can I disassemble the bed?
Can you?
I
I
can't.
broke into this. Oh sweet! I broke into this place, and all I got for it was a garbage bag. Took bleeding damage.
I have a backpack too, so don't forget to equip that.
How do you equip a bag? How do you equip like a bag? Is it? I guess used? Is it just like?
I think I spawned in the fucking building I spawned in last time. I totally did. Okay, well at least guys I'm not far, but I got like a lot of zombies nearby. Okay, I'm just gonna. Oh Jesus!
What's wrong, man?
There's like 20 fucking zombies outside the front of the house.
Want to buy a shotgun or pistol ammo, please?
I
have a
have
pistol.
5 9mm bullets on my body.
I have no idea where you got. I'm in a
Wait,
lumber mill.
bullets?
Then he goes back to check his body.
Oh my god.
Where is it?
Okay, guys, I'm coming up to the building.
Grim,
He's coming.
where's the fucking bullets, Grim?
I got
I don't
one.
know.
I only have one zombie coming up behind me,
Grim, where are the bullets?
guys.
I don't know. I didn't pick them up. I'm also busy grabbing a radio.
I'm pretty
Where
fucking.
did you put my body?
Hey, Andar, what's up?
Hey.
What the fuck? Oh god.
So wherever the zombie
they can't
is,
see us, they
she's
can't see-
not following.
She's behind the curtain. She can't see us yet.
Let's keep it that way.
Oh my god, I see a dead zombie body. Middle of a road.
Like, we keep it good.
Oh! She's in!
One sec, I'm looting all my shit.
Fuck you! Fuck you! Alright, so who wants some stew?
Oh, she has a wedding ring. I'll take that.
Yeah, I can make prepare some stew.
Hey, Grim. I know I'm kind of worried about times like this. Here, I want to give you something.
What?
I know that things are tough, but
No! No, you tried to kill me. Why would I say yes to that?
Is he trying to marry you?
Yes, he tried to give me her wedding ring.
Grim, I just want to tell you what.
Oh shit.
Oh god, man.
Oh,
What,
you guys didn't even check the fridge. There's eggs. There's all this stuff.
I didn't have enough room. I'm
Perishables in
overloaded.
the zombie apocalypse might not be the best of ideas.
What?
I said perishables
Yeah,
in the
but they're
zombie
still fresh.
apocalypse. Yeah, but like, what if you get food poisoning? You're fucked.
So,
What if you
mean,
undercook
well,
the eggs? or
Remember,
bad?
Joel, the zombie apocalypse literally just happened.
Yeah, but like.
I'm gonna go
So who's-
explore.
Who's hosting?
Me.
Andar.
And
You
when,
keep
it
on
came,
seeing
when,
what you
when, it,
manually
when it
say.
came to your backpack, how did you equip it?
Right click, equip on back.
Okay, so so a sack probably isn't something I can equip back.
I think it might.
No, it tells me put in and equip in like secondary that kind. I have a trash bag though. I can just throw things in this.
So how do we fight each other? How do we fight other people?
How would you want to?
Don't.
I mean, you have to ask.
Send me another invite.
You already know Fruit's gonna do that.
It's
Do you deploy what? The troll?
So I know
Is it
I'm
getting
close
dark?
to somebody. Yeah, there's day-night cycles in this.
Oh, I got bullets. Worst case scenario, I have a gun.
So which town are you guys in?
We have
Bottom,
no fucking.
We're in the rich town right now.
Muldrog, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Wait, Ender, where are we going?
Yeah, where are you guys
I
going?
fucking hate this menu system. Oh my god. I'm gonna eat a whole cabbage. That's gonna get me nice and energized.
Ooh, wait, there's a trash can out here. Oh, they don't have anything. Getting nighttime. Should we just hold out here, or?
I'm gonna listen to some music.
Here, I dropped a book for you guys so you can read.
I already have
Good.
books.
Okay.
I'm gonna listen to the radio.
Yeah, I have open hand corned beef. Just make that
Is
stew.
this water?
About.
Yes,
Oh, I
this
can
is
turn on the
water.
hits.
Fuck.
Please don't make her.
I have no idea where I am.
I'm trying to listen to the radio. What was that?
That's me drinking. Oh my god, I can't see shit now.
Carrying a little too much. So I can't do anything with these ripped sheets, which does kind of suck. Andrew, do you want a wedding ring for any purpose?
No.
I want to get married. It's an empty notebook.
Oh god, this is gonna take forever. Reading the Carpentry for Beginner book?
Grim, dumb question. Do you have any
I'm
soap? Trying to find soap. I want to clean my clothes. They're all dirty from all the fucking people I've killed.
I probably almost killed us with a gas.
Hey, was there
What?
by any chance a construction site type of thing near you guys?
No.
Talking about like a logging company?
No, it's a construction site.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to sleep for now, guys.
That's how I died.
What? You died by going to
I
sleep?
died in my sleep.
What happened?
I don't know. I guess it was too damaged or something. I just put quarter way through my sleep, just bleh!
By the way,
Died. What?
next chance you get, check your health tab, just in case. If you're ever in combat, it's important.
How
to
do-
know.
I'm
Where's-
actually
what's my
surprised
word?
because I haven't been damaged yet.
Where's
Your
my
health tab is a little hard.
The little heart thing on the left.
Oh, so that's how you enable PvP. Well, I'm not doing that.
What? What? Oh, I guess there's just a shitty button for it.
Bottom right corner that will act.
Oh, that's what that meant. I was wondering
Oh,
about that.
okay. I thought that was like some kind of a buff or some shit.
Yeah, I thought that was
No.
like a weapon thing. Also, remember, do you want these dry ramen noodles? Here, I'll drop them on the ground.
You can make fucking pie out of that shit now.
Thanks. I could, if I had a lighter, I could use the stove and all that.
I do.
Oh, I have a
Great.
lighter also. Don't take Noob's lighter, though. I don't
Wait,
trust
I
him.
meant nearby, so.
Let's see. Beef, freshly.
I have fucking zero idea where I am.
Yeah, it makes two of us.
Gotta
Please-
manually put
please
all your
turn that
shit
off.
in that.
Oh my god, full. Oh my god, is he...
I figured you might want to listen to some tunes.
Alright, so I have some food ready. It's uncooked, but it is a lot better than just eating things by itself.
I'll need some grapes.
Now we're on to something. I found some fucking.
I have a
food.
thought out TV dinner.
So, Graham, here's the lighters. I got 2 of them. Take them.
Oh.
Cook me a meal, you piece of shit. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go
I
outside.
see. So if I add positive traits, I have to add negative traits, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, much like in real life.
Graham,
you can't be
here's
perfect.
yeast, vinegar, pepper.
I'm not really a cook, just so you know.
Oh, I'm not either, so.
Well,
Alright.
someone should probably
I'm a
put this back
cook.
into
I'm
it.
actually a fry cook. I'm a burger flipper.
Alright, I'll
Yeah,
just
welding
keep
mask.
adding
Guys, put
shit
that
to
on.
my to my stuff.
Alright, I
Nah.
really
You
want to
guys check
stay
this house
out of the
next door?
woods because that is just bad.
Did you guys check the house next door for anything?
No,
No.
I ran into this one, and then just because Grim said he was nearby, I waited here. But we should probably hit the medical center. But I
No.
don't have a weapon, so
I
Okay,
like how
I'm
I can eat ramen noodles by gain unhappiness.
Mortar.
Wow, it's just like real life, actually.
Yeah, that's
Andrew, I found some whiskey for you. What?
we drink out of a urinal. It's great.
I'll eat some
Chicken.
cereal.
Just
I
like
probably shouldn't be
Fallout.
eating all this food. To be honest.
To be honest.
To be honest.
TBH.
Yeah.
Do I really need 3 can openers? Oh
Oh,
man,
just for the
one.
break room. Awesome soda, sweet.
did someone just move into this fucking house? What the fuck?
That's how I can use a microwave.
There's orange paint.
Oh my god.
what was that bing? Did someone turn the microwave on?
I'm sorry.
second.
Sorry.
Sorry, I
Sorry.
was trying to make hot pockets.
Okay, I want to point out that I thought that I
You
just
wanted
saw
me
you
to make
found
stir
you guys.
fry, but apparently I can't use the stove.
So you don't microwave from stir fry? How the fuck does that work? It's not really how...
I said the stove.
Alright, I've got a
Someone
problem.
just broke in, I think.
I've got a problem.
What's that?
I'm trapped in by fences and I don't know how to get out.
That was, I guess, fruit smashing the window.
Fruit?
No, I'm at the
He's
medical
going.
center.
Hello.
By the way, don't go to the medical center. I'm inside right now.
Alright, who wants some dry ramen noodle and canned corned beef stir fry?
Sure.
You couldn't even
Smell
fucking
like
boil the ramen noodles for the stir fry?
beef.
Shut up. There it is.
Oh, 1 second. I'm just cleaning all these
Cook
rags.
some beef.
Alright, I'm gonna eat some leek and canned corned beef.
Jamal, do you smell like beef?
Beef. Why is my mic
Kinda
so
like-
goddamn quiet, man?
Make sure if you pick up a backpack, you have to manually move the stuff into the backpack.
Yeah, I
you
accidentally
do?
transferred all of my shit into a container that's sitting next to me.
Yeah.
God,
So,
this zombie doesn't fucking die. I could kill a real person with a hammer like this much faster.
Jeez.
At least he believes in himself.
That's a person. Hey, let me close that door.
I feel like if I was desperate enough, I could do anything.
Well, I mean, yeah. People have been known to pick up cars.
Fucking
and
cars,
move
yeah.
them.
That's not actually true.
No, it's completely true.
It was actually a baby.
They picked it up, yeah.
No, a baby. They picked up a baby, not a car.
So
they
we
picked
know
up
there's
the
a
car
zombie.
and landed it on the baby.
You don't have to do shit.
Bottle disinfectant, painkillers, sleeping tablets, suture needle, vitamins.
Man,
Well,
who
good news,
fucking
guys. I
actually
got
locks their door at night? God damn.
Jamal.
What? Jamal!
Wait. I lived with this man for a while. I don't wonder you were broken into twice.
Alright, so I'm looting everything from the hospital.
Dude, you
by
do
the
realize
way.
you're the only person who's actually had their shit stolen, right?
Making a joke. What do
So
you
how
mean
do I
stolen?
load shit into the backpack exactly?
Oh, wait,
I'm
actually,
gonna
no.
go
Technically,
next
they
door and
left
help
you
you.
something in your vehicle.
Yeah.
A tomato.
No, they stole the box from my vape. Remember?
Oh, I see how you load shit in. Okay, I understand how you put shit in your backpack now.
Drop this in the ground.
So how much can the backpack hold exactly?
click
Don't
it,
say
and
top.
it'll tell you.
It's gonna save me a lot of fucking space.
God damn.
Oh, I have sleeping tablets, so Jamal's character that freaks out when he's inside.
Actually, that's a different character now.
Oh, oh God!
Sorry.
Christ, Grimhood, please. I also got some planks so we can plank up the windows.
I'm in a factory.
I can remove the curtains.
Why would you?
Because we're not gonna be setting up base in the hospital, are we?
I guess not.
Let's go back to our house.
So how many items can I hold at once?
Don't know.
Depends.
Your character strength.
You see in the top middle there, it has a weight limit.
6.7 out of 16.
I love the music that just randomly pops up.
Honestly, you startled me. I know I heard the door open, so I figured it wasn't a zombie, but like,
I like to touch your butt.
How do you change weapons?
doors?
1, 2.
You click on the door.
I'm wearing a skirt.
No, you're not.
Well, this is what a skirt looks like.
Also, I'm removing all the broken glass from all the windows just so we're all safe. Who wants to go in there and check what the zombie did?
What do you mean what the zombie did?
I know someone broke in there.
What? Window.
This room here. This
So
room.
I spawned in a house.
Oh, you already died, Benny.
Yeah,
I think
and
I'm in
the front
a
door was
cafeteria of
Alright,
some
never mind
Can't
then.
see shit. There should be a light switch in the walls.
So as I'm starting to loot stuff, suddenly, rawr, getting attacked.
Isn't this certainly a nice little situation we found ourselves in?
I was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize I should have made sure doors were closed and stuff first.
Alright, you're all good.
Who's getting beat? I just heard.
Ball?
That's not me.
Okay,
Nope.
let's go again.
I'm in a
Check
school,
outside.
apparently.
Check the perimeter.
I'm sitting in like a fucking warehouse, trying
Oh,
to find out how to
Benny?
change weapons.
What?
Where is he?
Dead.
Benny
died.
died, so.
Oh.
Already? Because...
How do I-
That's okay.
You weren't the first
all
person.
died. Yeah, you weren't the first. I'm heading next door, by the way, so... If I
Okay.
start dying...
If you give me some nails, I can make a wooden cross outside the house for all these corpses.
I like how I put on a skirt and now I'm wearing jeans.
Oh!
Sorry. Oh, trowel. Can I use that as a weapon?
No. I found a can opener! And some chocolate.
Meanwhile, I'm fucking drowning in can openers over here.
I found some chips and some coffee.
I don't want to use a fucking spoon as a weapon. God damn it!
Okay.
You can't just eat one potato chip.
Why'd you disassemble an entire door?
I didn't.
We don't. The zombies do that if they break the door. These planks.
Alright, well, nothing here.
I was gonna
good.
leave some
Check the
planks
next
outside
house.
the house. Be sure to grab
I
planks.
think
By
there
the way.
might be zombies in this house.
Yeah, there are zombies. This door's broken, but it has planks in front of it. So
Take
maybe-
planks and nails so we can fucking reinforce our house. I'd feel more confident if we were.
The radio's on here.
We'll turn it off.
1 sec. I'm equipping
it's
these planks as weapons. Don't push me away. It takes a while. Did you just?
Don't worry, it should give it to you too. I'm
No.
gonna look in the window here.
You picked them both up.
I'm sorry.
Yep, I'm
I'm kind of exhausted, so I'm gonna head back.
gonna drink this bottle of whiskey.
Do you... Oh, I am slow.
Do you want to drop one so I can fucking have a weapon?
I mean, I would, but...
You picked up both of them.
I know, it's just... Things go...
Be sure to disassemble TVs if you can.
I feel tired. Alright, let me drop it.
Ooh, honey, this shit never goes bad.
Why do you have the radio on?
Okay.
There you go, 2 of them.
How those zombies find me? They're following me.
How do you sleep?
Right
You
click on
just
it.
sit
and
in the bed
rest.
and right click and sleep. It's not as
Okay, how do you kill a zombie?
Hold
you
right
hitting
click.
it.
And just
Knock
the
it
longer
down.
you hold the then start spamming left click on it, like while still holding right click.
So while it's on the
So
ground,
I
you have to be
figured out
facing
where
it.
I am. There's actually a map you can look at online, like DayZ style.
Okay.
I'm apparently in the very top left of the whole fucking map.
There's a lot of zombies in this house.
Oh shit, my dudes.
Please be open.
What's up, Kill Bert?
Just-
Kill Bart.
Why did someone turn the fucking TV and
Who do you
radio
think?
on?
I
Who
had
do
to
you
turn it on
think?
really quick because my character was getting bored.
Then we have books.
Books take exponentially longer if you just sit in front of the TV. You're fine.
Something's coming.
I can't even read books.
There's
'cause
some
I made my
zombies outside the
character
house, by
illiterate.
the way. I'm trying to.
Why?
I don't know. I didn't think
I
that
moved
there'd
the
be a
zombies away
fun
from the
motive
house.
in this. Shit, Gilbert's working a 16-hour shift. God help you.
Good news is zombies are away from the house for a bit.
But
I'm starting to get really fucking tired.
get back to the house.
I'm trying.
Oh fuck! There's a guy inside the house.
If I get back to the house, I'm gonna bring zombies, and I don't want to do that, Grim. I'm gonna drop whatever I have. Fuck it. I'm dropping whatever I have outside the house, okay?
Is he dead?
Yeah, I killed it.
Okay, get away from the door really quick. Don't make any noise. I'm dropping shit outside the house.
Alright, come here, Ender. Did you get hit at all?
Fuck.
No, I don't think so.
Alright. My medical shit
I have slight damage.
Come on,
Yep.
fucking.
might
damn it.
be enough to still cause some sort of... Oh, something's coming.
There's a few zombies outside. I'm dragging them with me. Don't come outside.
One of these days, I'll find you guys.
Hey, I'm still in too.
Not much I can do about these fucking zombies. How do you avoid zombies?
Teamwork.
Oh, I'm getting a bit chilly.
Even anyone find out how to use a flashlight yet?
F, I think.
Do you actually have a flashlight?
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, shit. I tried that. It didn't
Radio
work.
on the counter. Can I take it?
There's what?
A radio on the counter? How do I pick it up?
You right-click it. Nice. Unless you get, I can't come back in. I can't come back inside. There's so many zombies.
Oh! Ender!
Damn it.
So you guys said you guys were near like a medical center kind of thing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the one medical center.
Cortman Medical.
I'm gonna see if I could find that on this fucking map because I am so fucking lost.
Hold on. If it doesn't work, I've tried. Just fighting them now. If we split up, we can each take a zombie. Don't worry, Grim, I'm coming.
Oh fuck. Okay, it's getting damaged in the
Lean
house
towards me.
there.
Ed, are you alright? If you need health, I have a shit ton of medical supplies.
Is there any kind of map?
That one's dead.
Like,
You can go online and look at ones.
That one's dead.
Yeah,
There's
just Google
nothing like
Project
your-
Zomboid map. It won't give you any
Alright.
information of where you are. You just have to kind of find it.
Remember, don't sprint, by the way, that attracts more.
how do I know if it's day or night?
If it's
Alright,
dark
we're good.
outside, it's night.
There's two more.
I have night owl, so it makes it a lot easier.
There's also apparently a way you can see the time, but I don't know how you do that.
Just keep hitting them.
I think it's probably.
I am
Okay,
extremely panicked!
Alright,
You
let's go inside.
motherfuckers.
Look, there was a shit ton of zombies out there, but we
There's
don't.
a 1 or 2 zombies in the house, just FYI.
Maybe some broken. Finally, hang myself.
Which door? I'm guessing the bathroom.
Where?
In the main room.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, there's not.
They're gone. I think they left. I think those are the two that we just killed at the end. Fuck. Does
I'm
anyone
just
have
gonna,
any nails?
I'm gonna have a short rest.
Is there a way to make nails, please?
I mean, I'm finding tons of nails. I should give them to you.
Okay, find us and near the medical center, please.
I haven't been
Can-
picking him up because
Can we
fucking.
like put the bodies somewhere my character can't see them? Cause I'm slightly panicked.
Here, move the fucking corpse.
Put him in the closet there.
On a box
to
of
your
nails though.
I don't want to
To
put
your
him in the closet.
Put him in the. That's where we put the other ones.
Jesus Christ, Grandma.
You guys just have a pile of dead bodies in your closet.
Can I eat this corpse?
I'm just gonna have
And
a bar
there
of
it goes.
chocolate.
How come zombies can climb fences, but we fucking can't?
Well, because we're shit.
That's bullshit. Oh, shit.
Something.
Who just opened the door?
I did.
Please let me drop this corpse. Ooh, a locket. That'll be worth something.
Oh my god, this game is fucking frustrating, actually.
Ender, help me
I
move
could-
these corpses.
I did move fucking half of them.
Well, I'm moving more. We got a lot. We killed a few zombies.
I have no idea where the fuck I am.
Can I like move furniture?
I
Yes.
think you can, actually, yeah.
We should start taking furniture from other houses and putting them into this house.
Yeah, good luck getting carry that kind of shit.
Do we really need these chairs here?
Now's not the time for fucking interior decorating.
Stop fucking closing the door on me. I'm trying to move corpses.
I'm disassembling the table. Because we really don't need a fucking table. Good job, Andar. Look at that.
Still one
We
more
got some
corpse in there.
Just,
good news.
you want me to build a fire in here? Or bad idea.
Probably a bad idea.
Maybe don't build a fire inside the house. Can I plank up the windows?
Alright, let me see if I can find you guys on this map. Bullshit.
We're in like the rich
Medical.
suburbs.
There's like 4 from what I can tell.
What, rich suburbs?
Yeah, like...
We're...
Do you see where the lumber mill is?
Oh shit, hold on, I think I'm doing damage. Oh fuck, I am.
I fucking... I just... Wait.
Since this
Thought
is
I'd
a
be
live
safe
co-op
over
game, I
here.
can't pause it, can I?
No.
So just make sure I'm away from windows if I have to run to go pee.
Hey, thanks for the
Okay.
100 bits,
Best.
Kilbert.
Okay.
That's $1.
It's a whole dollar.
That's a whole $1.
Alright. And I'm gonna
buy that for
follow
$1.
fruit. I'll protect him.
I got it, it's fine.
I need to check like my medical stuff real quick.
Planks around here. Where the fuck are the planks?
I am okay. That is good.
There's a radio outside. If we need another radio, you can disassemble it and take the parts. Don't know what we can use it for, but fuck it. What's this little green thing on the ground here? What's this?
Ooh, I found a big ol' house.
A bagel
Oh,
house?
this is the house I spawned in.
What's the name of the medical place you guys were at?
Courtman's.
Courtman.
I'm at McCoy Lodging Company.
Oh my god. I can make a board with a nail in it. So apparently you can use a board as a weapon if you need to.
Yes, that's what I've been doing for the last little bit, because I can find boards. I apparently can't find anything else.
I just need to get some fucking nails, man.
Well, I'm at the house to the bottom left of us. Take some, eat some more chips.
I just realized I have a baseball bat.
Oh, why haven't you been using that?
Because I found out a zombie. Alright, we should organize this fucking house. I'm gonna put weapons on this bookshelf over here.
I'm gonna see if maybe I can assemble this fancy outdoor bench.
Bar will go there. Hammer can go on there. Knife, pistol, we'll just leave there.
If you guys ever need like construction materials, go to the lodging company. That's where all of it is. Looks like
Alright.
Pick up
a
this
single
chair.
fucking backpack though, unfortunately. Or any food either, which is kind of sucking.
Courtman Medical. Oh my fucking god.
You're way too far, aren't you?
I'm like in
An axe.
in real like mileage. I'm like 8 miles away from you guys.
Got the chair.
I have an
I
axe.
guess I better start scavenging to make my way to you guys.
For if paint cans weren't £5, I would bring this purple paint to you.
I don't really care about aesthetics right now, man. Don't want to put a chair where we can easily be fucking bit by Sam Bambos. So I'm doing some interior decorating.
Not that you care about aesthetics, but
What do we even do in this like room full of corpses here? Do we even do anything about this?
No, just it's the room of shame.
I'm just gonna sleep on the sofa then, I guess.
All these bodies out front have like nothing on them.
Gee, it's probably because they're just regular people.
This guy's a wallet.
Oh my god, it takes a while to cook stuff.
Ooh, foundation making.
Yoink.
Do you need any pots or pans while I'm out? 'Cause I found a lot of these.
I don't know. Yeah, bring them over. We could use those.
I really need food.
Make some. Look, go into
I'm in
houses.
a
break
lodging. I have nowhere to go from here. I'm in a
There's
lodging.
probably a break room or something.
I found like 1 or 2. I raided the snack fridge, and then that's it.
What's my school bag? Alright, I'm gonna go load up the bathroom with all of our medical shit, okay?
Alright.
Okay.
Speaking of medical
Sorry.
shit, I previously had a first aid kit, but I guess now it's just fucking gone.
You could
And
give equipped.
By bathroom, I actually mean there's no room in the bathroom to put medical stuff, so I'm putting it in the bedroom.
So
And
far,
our
I've
D-
killed so many things.
And do you need medical supplies?
Yeah.
What do you need?
Not bandages. I don't know. It says I'm in pain.
I have painkillers.
I have severe damage, but
Take some painkillers.
doesn't.
God, the moment I find a shotgun, I'd be an unstoppable motherfucker because I have 38 shells.
Well, it's stoppable until the Zambambos hear you. Is it daytime? No. Music's just playing, I guess.
Sorry, where did you put the?
They're in the bedroom. I need to get a fucking saw or something like that.
I have one.
Well, noob, can you find us?
I'm looking. I'm just trying to fucking explore right now. I'm trying to
You
find like.
bring a little treasure you supposedly have.
Well, if Jamal can tell me where I am.
Do it your own damn self.
Do it yourself, you fat fuck.
Code monkeys?
It's Game Grumps, actually.
Oh, let's arrest him.
Ooh. So this house over here has surprisingly a lot of good stuff.
Well, bring it over. Find me some tools so I can start disassembling shit and fixing our house up.
Alright.
Find me some soap so I can clean up all this blood as well.
I don't know if I'll find all that, but... You want some lipstick? I found some lipstick.
I'm fine, thank you.
You
Thank
could
you.
use some lipstick.
Grim, it's like putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, makes it nice.
Bandaging my groin.
Something Black Mirror.
What?
Something Black Mirror.
Oh.
There are clothes all over this ground.
No.
Is Eddie running around?
The fuck is that?
Benny.
There's my cat.
It was my cat.
Benny.
Benny? Does Benny sound like a waterfall?
Where is Benny? Benny?
It's so fucking lot. I wish it was. Oh god, that's.
Yes, honey, it's me.
Oh god damn it! I'm exerted. I can't fucking. I'm starving. I'm in the middle of a forest. I don't know where the hell I am.
So, let's see, we're dropping all the medical stuff in the bathroom, right?
Bedroom.
I go to the bedroom because unless I can start building like a cabinet or something.
Yeah, I'm losing health.
Okay, and
Let me do a medical check on you.
Very severe damage.
You're
Right
bleeding
where
out.
I'm bandaged. But I bandaged it.
Well,
You're
you're
still
still
gonna bleed out.
running out of materials to keep yourself alive here. Let me, I might have some stuff for
I
you.
don't want to say the obvious, but you keep making yourself, you're still gonna fucking bleed. This is how I got fucked up last time. Basically, the most
How do I
you might need to rest.
how do I give you stuff? There you go. Vitamins. Take this water bottle too. Make yourself feel better.
And Art, here's what you're gonna have to do. You might have to stay inside the house for a while and make us some dinner.
Alright, accept deal. Both offers must be sealed before trade. Seal your offer. There you go.
Look.
See if
Hey,
any of
Mark.
that helps.
I care about your health, Andar. I don't want you to die.
For your health.
What the fuck was that sound?
It's Mario being a T-Rex.
Okay.
I mean, that's the
I
thing.
really don't know if that was the game or fruit.
What?
I just heard like.
That was me, actually. Well,
Alright, I'm gonna put all our food and stuff in the fridge.
yeah, Scrim Hood.
Alright, I
Put it in
am
the
to
fridge.
estimate that I am like right here.
I'm gonna miss you, Grim.
I'm just gonna stay on this
How
fucking
you gonna
road.
miss me? I've actually raided houses and done stuff.
I've done that too, but you know what happened?
I did it better.
Not really, but you know we can believe in that for now. I think Grimwood, who found that wedding ring?
Me.
Actually,
So it says I have 1 skill point available. What do I do with that?
nothing. You have to get more in order to. You have to level up more in order to actually get more skill points that are relevant.
I'm
No,
also
but
gonna
it
put
says like I have 1 available. How do I redeem it?
You have to wait until you have enough skill points.
But what?
Okay, so you know those perks that you saw at the start of the game there, buddy?
Yeah.
You can spend your skill points on those. So you have to wait until you have more than 1, because remember, they cost multiple fucking skill points, in theory.
Well, that's stupid.
Well, fuck you.
I guess I can't agree with that.
I mean, I'm
nothing.
just saying it's dumb because, like...
Well, no, it's dumb. A butt that talks to you, but he talks by farting. That's dumb.
That sounds fantastic. I want one.
Ashy McGee.
Did you watch that show?
I watched it frequently, actually.
Oh, that's a lot of fucking zombies.
I got a
I'm getting
belt.
a
Can I
fucking
whip
That's a lot of
Pepsi really
fucking
quick.
zombies. Oh no. Okay, well we're getting right into this. I heard like 7 zombies. It's great.
I'm gonna read some, or who wants some advanced carpentry stuff?
I
I
want
do.
somebody to read the rest of my immortal.
Here, I'll drop it.
Yeah, where's Terry?
Oh, finally, my health's finally going up. Okay.
See? See, you're welcome.
You just had to
Yo, this
relax.
is after I fucking disinfected myself another 3 more times and changed my bandages again, and then
It's
fucking
just like in
started
real
eating
life.
a lot more food. Jesus.
Damn.
Andrew, stop
That's
eating
good.
so much food.
I need to. I'm
fucking around. It's a meme.
Me dip.
I love
Do I
the way
really
that
need
the
coal?
character designs will look in this game. Whenever you
Need to
zoom
have a
in
refresh.
completely, it looks like an Adult Swim game or some shit.
Kinda, yeah.
You look like an Adult Swim game. Fuck you.
so we're all just gonna take refuge in this tiny little house in the suburb.
I found some
Oh.
aluminium.
Oh shit. Oh shit.
I'm kind of miffed that I fucking spawned literally like on the other side of the fucking continent from you guys.
It's okay, just make the trek.
By the end of the stream, you guys are gonna be fucking gone.
We're gonna be out of town.
Oh, Benny died.
Rest
Benny!
I think Benny might be muted. Oh, why did you just
Yeah.
type in
Okay.
F?
So paying respects.
Oh, I am muted, sorry. Yeah, I was injured, couldn't find any bandages or anything.
Yeah, I have
Die,
a broken
damn.
bone right now, and I have a dirty bandage on my fucking groin. So just like real life.
I did it. Oh fuck.
If you don't keep replacing your bandages, you're gonna fucking die.
Oh shit, really?
Yes.
Damn, this axe is good. It's a 3-hit kill. A vest. Shoes. Oh. That's right. I'm in a house. Damn it! I want to eat things. I want to fucking kill people. Fucking fuck off. How many fucking people are in this house? This is fucking. Fuck, guys.
Well, I'm bleeding.
Come on.
Shit. I need to come
Get back to the
now.
base. Should be some medical
Yes,
stuff.
and food.
There's nothing to fucking loot. All the houses I've been to have already been looted.
Potato chips and pepper. That's all I need.
Not all of them.
Well,
Going a little further north.
Hello,
I'm gonna head
Terrence.
south next time.
What are we? Is it free? Can I play?
No,
No.
it's
Not
$50.
free.
Oh,
Just
okay.
drink some
Well,
soup.
I'll see you later.
No, read my immortal.
Oh, you should have told him earlier, you fucking dick.
Bring him back. I want to hear it.
Well,
I
do
don't.
your own fucking work, you
I
bitch.
don't.
Well, I'm important.
You are not that important.
Jesus.
Mom, on your side. Fuck you. Kidding.
I just spawned in a house with no front door.
Imagine being really hungry and just eat a whole red pepper.
I've done that before.
Hey guys, I'm coming inside the
Peppers are
house.
fucking delicious, dude.
Yes, but just imagine that you're like starving and you eat nothing. Okay, it's closed door.
Hey, Dart.
No, I got hit for the first time. Fuck me.
Wait, suture needle.
Fuck me, dude. Closed door.
Fuck me, dude. Dude, fuck me.
Oh,
Dude, fuck
shut
my
up.
wife.
Fuck my dog.
Please don't.
Rip clothing into
My
all.
dog!
Die! Die, motherfucker!
So, Adar, how much do I have to keep bandaging myself exactly?
Fuck my
I don't know.
CTA. Cat fuck.
I hear a zombie.
Yep. Dealing with it. Motherfucker
Jay,
is
if
not
I
dying.
someone. I might as well just break this open.
Adar, help!
can break
ATSTs,
these
ATSTs.
You can't break those cuffs.
Adar, buddy, I need some help. Adar, please!
They're coming. Oh.
He's not dying, he's like invincible. Oh my god, thank you.
One swing. That's all it takes.
I'm just fucking around with my green screen right now.
I don't know how many times I hit him, I think... Oh, accuracy reduced.
I can just eat pepper. Like,
You
I
never
like how
done that?
I like how eating a whole thing of pepper gives you minus 10 hunger, but it also gives you plus 10 thirst, plus 15 boredom, and plus 20 unhappiness.
How do I equip a backpack?
Right click, equip on back.
Oh. I guess you can. It's a bag. It's a plastic bag. Is that not
Yeah,
a
and
backpack then?
you can't do it right now, unfortunately.
That's dumb.
Yeah. I'm in the housing area though, so there's zombies now, but at least I can fucking get food.
Alright, I got some toothpaste and a toothbrush. I don't know, it might be useful. Fuck.
I'm taking refuge in a random house and reading a book about foraging.
Yeah, I'm walking a lonely road. I haven't even seen a fucking zombie in a while.
Also, I got
thankful.
toilet paper, good news. Did you just loot everything in the fucking thing, Adar?
No.
Or did I?
Stop being a klepto, but you're the one that took everything. Oh.
Oh, it's all... Fuck, why is... Fuck, the entire thing's empty.
Hey, someone's been here. I see a dead zombie.
Oh, you'll probably
Tell
find
me
a
if you-
trail of dead zombies.
Putting the can openers in there.
I need some food. I'm not sure.
I must be the luckiest motherfucker alive.
You know what the
What?
funny thing is? I say one of my fucking traits the lucky. And I
Jesus Christ.
apparently lucky spawns you fucking 8 miles away.
Probably have spawned technically.
I mean, the good thing is I figured out where I am now.
Oh, fuck me. It's not good. I'm probably gonna die here. I'm dead. This probably veins
I
armed.
can't take it anymore.
No! Fucking after all this shit, really?
I like the music, but like it's just it makes no sense. Like, do a Left 4
What?
Dead and play the music whenever fucking like there's action happening, not while I'm walking down a fucking street and I just hear dun 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 dun.
Calm down.
I need my fucking atmosphere.
I'm just gonna die, I guess. Cool.
Noob, how come you couldn't find us, man?
What was that for?
I've been waiting for you. Where are you, man?
Eat shit.
Oh,
And die.
I actually
Exactly.
wonder, where were you?
Oh, no, looking for you guys. That's what I was fucking doing. But you know, it's kind of hard whenever I ate shit and died.
I love you.
I hate you.
Ah, fucking Christ.
Eat shit and die.
Why is it that every fucking door I open has 2 zombies inside every goddamn time?
Because you're picking the wrong door. You gotta pick door number 1. Door number 2. Door number... Oh, fuck. There's lots of zombies. Go figure. The one
First
point
aid for
whenever I
beginners.
find an area that actually has things in it. I guess I got no choice but to scavenge.
I'm gonna have to jump.
Actually, fuck it. I'm just gonna
Okay.
keep going.
Oh boy, I spawned in a place with zombies in it. That's great.
This
To be
house layout
fair,
is fucking terrible.
we all spawn in a place
Yeah, I
with
mean,
zombies.
there's zombies everywhere. It's a fucking zombie game.
Wait, I see someone running out. I see you. Look at the window.
Noob, come on, follow me.
Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking kidding me?
What?
So far, the only person that hasn't died and respawned, like, oh hey, there they are.
If you want to fucking come with already?
This fucking
Well,
stream
there's
is
a
gonna be
fucking zombie in
archived as
here.
Jamel's
If
fucking
I'm literally
journey.
bleeding out, I really
What?
don't have time.
Where the fuck are you? Are you over there? Okay.
Jesus Christ. Okay, we have to go.
Please tell me you're still by the fucking medical center, right?
Yeah.
Good. Because that's
All right,
exactly
dude.
where I'm fucking heading to.
Trying to lead too many zombies to our house. For God's sakes.
Yeah, don't pull a fucking Daisy.
Okay, let's walk. Walk for now. Walk
Jesus
for now.
Christ.
What?
It's a amount of fucking bodies.
Yeah. Welcome to our house. Alright, Ender, kill him.
This is fucked up. What the fuck are you guys doing here?
Okay.
They're fucking corpses. It was an orgy and everybody died of AIDS.
Cool. So now I know where we're. I guess
Simultaneously.
I guess I'll start scavenging.
Hold on, I'm gonna
Basically.
tweet. I got a tweet.
Anyone have a fucking weapon I can use?
There's some in the fucking...
There's some in the bookshelf.
Yeah, go
Well,
to
that
the
reminds
bookshelf.
me, I never tweeted out that I'm live.
While you're live? I didn't know it. You didn't tweet.
I almost got caught off guard by a zombie.
And
Who's
I'll start
leaving
looking
all these
around.
fucking broken kitchen knives everywhere?
it's like The Sims, but with zombies.
Only more garbage.
Also, I am walking forever. Come watch.
You really kill yourself in the spawn where we are. I figured best bet.
Nah,
Dude,
I've
I
got
need to
too
find a
much
saw.
loot.
So, noob,
So
come with me. We're gonna go fucking scavenging.
okay.
Actually, maybe I should. Let me fucking relax really quick. We have... Don't head north. There's really nothing we haven't already checked out there.
I'll go that's way then I guess.
That's where you're wrong. I have a whole supply of fresh food for all of us.
Gilbert says I'm probably just gonna kill myself at work, TBH. Don't do that. Do it while I'm live, so that way I can get put on Reddit and get lots of karma.
I should just rest. I'm sure if I rest, my minor injuries will go away.
Dead.
My health is not that bad right now. Though I do need to keep fucking removing these bandages and getting new ones.
So hopefully what I did won't spawn a lot of enemies.
I just realized what I'm doing right now. I'm basically simulating walking the fucking Boston Trail.
I don't get this. How the fuck do I get back to full health?
One of these days I'll get the
You have
dead
to
man's.
keep... Or just eat and relax. It takes time.
Yeah, it's not like video game. You're hurt.
I know.
Ender, drink this. Here, this should help you.
Drink this, babe.
Do you see it, Ender?
It's dangerous to go alone.
Please? Nice.
Yeah, just drink the bleach.
If you're actually drinking blanch, don't actually drink them.
Oh, why am I panicking a bunch?
Because there's dead bodies everywhere.
Oh, because I was bandaging myself up. That's why.
Yeah, hemophobic.
Much like in real life, if I see my fucking blood, I'm gonna freak the fuck out. Whatever, I'll just deal with dirty bandages.
Alright guys, I have a special treat for all of you in the fridge. It is an entire
Severed
fresh
head.
watermelon.
Wow, you went to the same house I went to then.
Why didn't you take it?
I didn't really want it.
I mean, imagine
Also,
carrying a
because
fucking watermelon around.
Also, because I'm gonna tell you something, Grandpa.
What?
There was like 30 zombies there, and so I said,
I'm eating the entire can of oats.
Andrew,
Do you
that's my
need a
fucking
can opener
oats.
or?
No, I got one.
I hit the can.
No, he's eating he's eating the entire can. He's eating nothing inside.
Alright, well I'm gonna take off my clothes.
Where the fuck on the map are we?
You guys are
Doesn't matter.
basically
Like, if
in
you're
the
looking-
fucking center.
And I'm gonna keep reading my book about foraging.
Not really the center. Do you see where all the fucking farming fields are?
Yeah.
All right, go right from there, and that set like city area. That's you guys.
You sure?
Yes.
Basically, the top right then?
No.
Right, like the middle
Okay.
right?
Oh my fucking god! How do I even explain this?
You don't.
All right, from the farming fields, okay?
Be farming fields. So I mean, it's actually called farming fields.
I don't fucking know.
Well, then there's different farms. Fucking. It doesn't matter.
They're
I'll find it out myself.
agricultural fields.
Then
There's
why
one in the
specifically
middle of the
say
map.
Farming fields,
Yes,
my
the
dude?
very
one in the-
center of the
where-
map. That is the
Okay.
fields, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now imagine fucking... I don't fuck where the river is. Okay, you see the river?
Yeah.
That is
What's
north.
the river?
That is north from the farming
It
fields.
is?
You guys are east of those farming fields.
Why are you saying farming fields like that?
Agricultural fuck boy.
Just say fields, you weirdo.
Because the whole fucking map is fields. We're playing
Here's
on
the point,
GM
though.
fucking flat ground, whatever the hell it's called.
Then just say farms.
Because they're not farms.
They're farming fields.
Yeah, like agricultural fields.
I'm sunstruck. It says nauseous, unable to concentrate, and desperate for liquids.
You're
You
wearing
need to
too
drink
much.
something.
You're wearing too many clothes, and you're not drinking enough water.
Just drank a bunch. Did I just
Well,
keep
you're wearing.
drinking?
You're wearing too many clothes. Then you're getting too hot.
So how do I
I'm
take off
getting
my
hot
clothes?
and bothered.
Press I.
Just
and
rip them.
it's-
Don't rip
Yeah.
them.
You know, you'll find more,
You
guaranteed.
can right click and unequip.
Oh my god, I actually have nails now. Jesus Christ, the fucking struggle is over. It's Friday the 13th, my way inside this house.
Speaking of Friday the 13th, new update shortened Jason's grab range, so it's not, Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, Jamal, what are you talking about the whole Trouble in Terrorist Town
They
thing?
teased
Also,
the
they
new
added
game
Fox.
mode. The new game mode is basically a murder mystery featuring the counselors. So one person is known as the killer, and then you have to go through and kill everybody else.
So it's
That's
sort of
pretty
like
cool.
Yeah.
it's sort of
Yeah.
like the first game or the first movie,
Yeah, kind of like the first movie.
except everyone knew who it fucking was.
I mean, it's basically either Trouble in Terrorist Town or Gmod Murder. I
Wanna
don't think
play do
anybody
that mode?
plays as...
What about Morbus? Guys, I just found a video game.
Bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it, bring
Oh, now you guys are having a fucking LAN party? God damn. You know,
Not
you
really
know
a
what my
LAN.
stream right now is? It's just me walking across the goddamn road.
Should-
Okay,
What's
over
the-
and
Kill
over
what's
yourself,
the-
but maybe you'll respawn close.
Fucking kill yourself.
Just kill yourself,
I
Jamal.
mean, I'm already on track to finding you guys. It's only just another... Like, I'm already halfway there.
It's only
Okay,
another
that's...
few
Oh
more
my god.
years,
Okay,
says
so,
Jamal.
see what pisses me off? I could probably go get my stuff, actually.
Why?
Because I think I know where I died, and this died up the road, apparently.
I don't know
Map
idea
is-
where I am. I'm just wandering through houses.
Welcome to this fucking shitty ass game. I mean, good game.
I mean, I'm enjoying this game. I would just enjoy it a lot more if I was with my friends and not walking down the street. Like, shit, I
Okay,
want
so
a
if I-
fucking
oh,
car.
So, one put spinning out, that's hilarious. How long have you guys been here for, basically, the entire time?
Yeah.
So I took a... where I spawned over by a convenience store. I ran up way past where you guys are, like 3 miles up. Then I turned around and then went back that way, and that's where I died.
Can I loot corpses or no?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
like
can.
they treat like boxes.
See the loot window in the top? Just when you're near a corpse, it'll be one of the things you can loot.
Oh my god, I'm finally getting nails. Jesus
And I'm trying
Christ.
to set it up so I can have an auto walk or something. I did it accidentally earlier, and I'm trying to do it again. Fuck.
If only this were WoW with Warcraft, though.
Fuck. God damn it, fuck it.
So,
Ah, I might as well get relaxed while I do this shit.
You walk so slow in this game.
I know. How do you think
Hey,
I
Benny,
fucking
Benny,
feel right now?
what?
Benny,
Found.
come to me.
I
He
don't
found
see-
you. Zoom out.
Oh, there you are. Hey.
Follow me. Follow me.
There's
It's up. We
zombies.
gotta go. Follow me.
Man, these voices in my head, I
Stop,
can hear
stop,
them
stop,
meeting
stop.
up.
Stop moving there. You stop running now. Just walk.
Okay.
You know what honestly pissed me off? Since
What?
you guys are all met up now, as soon as I get there, like something happens and I either die or you guys all die.
Okay, so it's this house right here.
Oh, I found a dead
This
body.
is the house?
Yep, this is the house. Go in there and meet up with everyone else. I'm gonna keep veteran. Don't forget to close the door.
Boss
Alright, I'm
says he
coming
didn't
back to
know
you
I knew
guys.
about this game. Oh, dude, this game's been on my horizon for years now.
Then why didn't you buy it earlier?
Because
The other day you were talking
I
about how
always
much this
assumed
game...
it was one of those games where, like, it was stuck in early access hell
Hi,
forever.
I'm
It is
currently
stuck in
reading a
early
book.
access hell forever.
Yeah, but I
Can I?
thought it was just like the original thing that they pushed out was still what I thought it was DayZ, basically.
To be honest, this is actually basically... The game has not changed that much.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
put
then
a
again,
curtain on the door.
What I'm trying to do, Jamal, is not make fun of you.
I know. I gathered that. You've been
Gosh,
making
this
fun
place
of me
is
all day.
messy. Is there no way to clean?
Yeah.
Wait until you find the
No.
closet that has dead bodies in it.
Oh, don't open that closet, Benny.
Open the closet, open the closet, open the closet, open the closet,
Benny, I want you staying out of the closet.
open the closet.
I'll stay out of the closet.
Thank you, Benny.
Have you guys been to the laundromat yet?
No.
Got in
I
my
have
laundry.
food, Grim.
It's in the place all your food in the fridge.
Okay. Hey,
That's where
Amanda.
we've been storing them for now.
How long do you think it would take a shitty, slow zombie to actually break open something?
I don't know.
Because, like, in reality, I don't think a human... Like, your hands would eventually just fall off if you just kept trying to claw at a door.
Maybe they're
You know?
like fucking. Who
Gordon
was the
Freeman.
first showrunner? Frank Darabont was that his name for Walking Dead?
Yeah.
Like the first season Walking Dead where they could climb ladders and open up doors and fucking unlock doors and shit. The fucking
What?
dumbest shit. The first season of The Walking Dead had zombies that knew what the fuck was going on. Like, because the showrunner is an idiot. Like, he thought, oh yeah, zombies can pick up, like, bricks and throw them through windows. Like, fuck off.
Fuck are you?
I'm talking
What?
about the first season of The Walking Dead.
First season of The Walking Dead was the best one.
Yeah, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about how the zombies, like, for whatever reason, like, the showrunner decided that the zombies could have, like, functional brains. And, like, they
I feel
could
like you're
unlock
overthinking
doors.
this.
Do you need a saucepan, Grim?
Fur, what's up?
No.
What?
Okay. I'm apparently
Where are you?
hungry, so...
How far do you zoom out?
I'm gonna
Yeah, I'm
take
fucking
this
checking out this
fresh corn.
No, but you can't see behind you.
You're right, yeah, I forgot.
I'll have some actual content here.
So, Noob, do you already get your shit back from there?
Nope, I mean, it's way up here.
You're not going to want to go north. I'll give you a fucking hint as to why. Oh my god.
We've killed so many people.
Yeah, I think the semi-intelligent zombies thing fits narratives, but like with The Walking Dead, it just doesn't seem right.
So I figured out you can equip the plastic bag as
Well, if
another
you actually
backpack.
read the comic.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
Huh.
Fred, I'm not
Huh.
talking about the comic. I'm talking about the fucking television show.
So I was able to stuff stuff into a bag.
I mean,
Fur, I'm gonna keep going this way. You can go back to town if you want.
hold
There's
on,
a
I'm going to
horde.
build...
Do you have any
Horde.
water by chance?
What?
But just go inside a house if you really want to, my dude.
I'll go to the laundromat, I guess.
Wait, Noob, you want to slow the fuck down, my dude?
What's up?
I'm going to fucking stick with you. We're going to be a team, aren't we?
Let's not go in there. I should leave.
No,
I think
you
we're
really
going back.
don't.
I think you're going back. I think you're going back to like the house.
Whatever, I guess I'm leaving. Am I just dropping my entire inventory? How do I stop? Shit, I'm emptying out my inventory. How do I stop?
I don't know. I fucking know.
Why do I'm just emptying out my entire How do I stop?
I don't know.
Noob!
I don't fucking know. You
Why
think
are
I
you
know this
asking
shit
him?
again?
I'm eating a whole watermelon right here.
Oh my god.
And-
Oh
Oh,
my
Panda died.
Fucking Jesus Christ!
What happened?
I just fucking died in the kitchen. I was.
Oh,
I was
Oh, yeah.
watched him fall over.
Kill me! Kill me!
he's a zombie!
You're gonna,
What
sorry, and fucking free. I'm aggroing all the zombies away from the thing and just kill the ones that's on you.
This fucking sucks. What the fuck, man?
Benny!
What?
Help!
Can I not hurt?
Yeah.
Can I?
You can't
Noob,
hurt.
just leave. Just leave. It's not worth it.
There's food in the oven, by the way.
Oh, do I turn the oven off or why?
Or just watch it. You can. There's a little green bar underneath it that's cooking level.
Oh shit!
I
Fucking
don't see
zombie
that.
came out of the goddamn wall.
Oh, I see. Grab.
Hey guys, I might. So is everyone dead or something? What's happening?
No, it's standard studying.
can opener. School bag? I'm taking your bag.
I'm gonna want to take the bag, yeah.
Fucking curb stomped beyond.
All right, I'll keep an eye on the food. So far, only one of your things has cooked, like to perfection. So good job.
I died
guess-
taking one of them off.
I
You
guess
burn
I'll
yourself,
just,
and that was just a final straw.
yeah. I'll just read my forager's book while I'm waiting for your meal to finish. Oh, it's finished.
I
You
got,
guys
I
are
got a
all
lot of meat
fucking
and
cooking
stuff
food
on
and all
me,
this kind of
so-
shit, and I'm just here fucking dying.
Oh, I found some 387.
This radio keeps telling me about tacos and burritos.
It's alright, it's
So
alright.
apparently there's a transfer all button, and all that does is just make you drop all your shit on the floor.
Yeah, I found
great.
that out earlier.
And it does. You can't cancel
Oh
it
shit,
for
there's
some reason.
rain.
All right. Does he have anything else on his corpse?
Yes, he does. Quite a bunch of nice stuff.
Here, there's
Yeah.
loading you
I
in there.
basically just walked over to this building that was off my path to eat a whole watermelon and kill a zombie, and I'm now walking back.
I mean, it sounds like the life.
It sounds like the fucking life. Bug's life.
I'm inside. Why can't I unlock the window from the inside?
Because this.
Oh
game
yeah,
is
that's right. I
stupid.
have to add a fucking quote for fruit.
What?
Oh, it's raining. Great. Fucking.
Which?
I'm gonna put my like silverware and stuff in this cupboard.
All right.
What quote?
Can I just eat this corpse? That's like your third quote about corpses.
Do you need any planks?
They might.
I don't know. Eat some honey, I guess. Can't eat honey. I need to relax. Here, just taking. Take a
Okay.
bath.
So I am now good.
So, I might die.
Uh,
Why might you die?
One, I'm apparently very depressed.
Hey, it's real life.
Two,
You really
I
made
have a
character
thing
for
that
them.
says damp, get out of the rain or you'll catch your death.
Cold. You'll catch a cold.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. I'm stuck walking a fucking trail and I'm wearing my boxers. Everything else has been turned into bandages.
Holy crap! Your
One of them I
bag was
have wrapped
filled
around
with
my
stuff.
dick.
I know. I had a lot of shit.
Yeah, you
That
did.
don't remind him, man. He's
Seriously,
died.
every quote that has the word corpse in it, it's from fruit. Fuck, that's a good looking corpse.
I'm gonna make some ramen noodles for
Have you
anyone.
ever just rogged on
Okay.
a corpse? Can I just eat this? Fucking, you have like 4 quotes here.
It's like a story. Hey, look at that, that's a good looking corpse. You're a rock dog at corpse?
How did you put food in here? Cause like, oh, there it goes. It's cooking now. Okay.
You can change the temperature and you can set a timer and all that stuff too.
Alright, now I'm gonna try and get my shit back here from the mistake that is that fucking me dropping every single item because the game decided to shit out.
I was just great. I'm about to have some fun here.
Ah, I
Alright,
can't, there's so many zombies.
I'm gonna have a little bit of your animal meat stuff.
Strawberry seeds. Can we like? Is there gardening? Is that a thing?
Yeah, you can find
Yeah.
it. So remember that part where I died? I might have to again.
Yummy.
Back.
Alright, I'm gonna put the salmon in the fridge.
Come on! Get the fuck out! You fucking piece of shit zombie! I just want to bandage myself. Fuck you.
So
Getting
glad I'm
sick
with
of
God.
this. Getting really fucking pissed off. Grim, I might need your help because if we want to barricade our house, all of my nails dropped out because my guy decided to go full retard and just drop everything in his goddamn inventory for no reason. Let's put that right next to the loot button, guys. That seems like a very smart
Oh my
idea.
god, I have so long to walk.
How do you think I feel, Jamal?
Alright, you can't see this on the stream, but at least it'll give some context to walls. Oh, fuck. Alright, so I am.
I like how it
here.
just fucking instantly stopped raining.
I have to get here. So now
Okay,
I
I see
bet
what-
you're thinking, why don't you just walk diagonally to it? If I go through the forest, I slow down to basically snail pace.
Don't do it. Stop. Jamal, don't do it.
I want to.
Stop.
I want to die. Ow.
I'm not sure what you expected to happen there.
I'm choking up popcorn.
Good. I hope your popcorn lung takes you.
I mean, I did vape, that's why I started choking on the popcorn.
Alright, so where are you, Fruit?
I'm correct.
Oh, great.
So, Graham, I actually think I went... No, I went really fucking far north. Yeah, to fucking make my way back.
I think it'd be a good time to resurface this hypothetical. Tommy Wiseau offers to give you a hand job. Do you take it? Yes, no.
No, he looks weird.
But it's a hand job.
So?
Sorry, I can't come rescue you because
Okay,
it's
cool.
raining.
That's great. I'm probably gonna die. Speaking of being rescued. Oh, come on, really? Oh, open the door, open the window, open the window.
What's
Why,
wrong, man?
how's the window locked from inside? My energy is great.
So, Graham, I'm actually running back home.
Alright.
I'm gonna bring some friends.
Is it raining again?
Yeah.
Never stop for me.
Alright.
Yeah, it's never stopped for me. Although it might have just stopped now. I don't know.
Way downtown, walking fast, faces past down.
No, you don't have to look Tommy Wiseau in the eyes. You can close your eyes. You can put a bag over his head, but it's a hand job from Tommy Wiseau. You can still hear
Do I
him if you
gain
put the
from it?
bag.
Would he be making Tommy Wiseau noises?
Yes, he'd be making various noises. Like, so if you
Can
put
you make a
unless
few?
you put a ball gag at him, in that case it's just kind of muffled. Anyway, how's your sex life?
Grim.
I mean, he probably knows. Oh my god, from pickles. That
If we
makes me
go
right.
straight this way, that's where all the shit is. What?
Alright, but it's cold. Let's wait till it stops raining.
Going outside.
You'll catch your death of cold. It's raining.
Yes, Grim. I know what I have to do.
Oh, hi, butt. Perfect butt spot response.
I gotta fucking get rid of him. I gotta kill
I
him
found
all.
more nails. I found more nail speed there, and match them all. Yeah, playing cool. You know what I'm talking
Do what I got. Ah! Oh, you hit me. Minor injuries. Oh,
I didn't think I could do that while you were,
well,
Oh no,
I found some
feel...
non-nail speed. Oh, I found a shotgun.
there's... I'm taking some painkillers.
Now we're in business.
Holy fuck.
I like how one of my
What?
moodlets is currently depressed.
What the?
Oh.
Why would you do that?
I found Benny's dead body.
Oh no.
What does it look like? Is it hot?
To Grim, it probably is.
But I would hope not. It'd be kind of weird.
So if we're just shot a gun, they're swarming in. Why would you do this to us?
I didn't mean to. I did it on accident. I'm sorry. I was trying to equip a new weapon. Just run. Grim, just run. I have an idea.
I have to at least lure them away.
No, I know how to lure them away. Follow. Just, no, don't follow me. That's stupid. No, hold on. If I shoot the gun again...
Shoot it again.
I'm back.
Why did you
Benny, I
leave?
found-
He shot a
Sorry.
gun and it caused all the zombies in the area to come chasing our direction because Fruit's an
Oh.
idiot.
I'm attracting them all to me now.
No, you're not.
Well, Grim,
Well, I'm about to test and see how the shotgun works.
I
See.
came back just as a zombie came into the house to attack me.
Bad.
Try not to die. Try to stay safe and calm and somewhere.
Oh,
I'm making more...
shit. There's more and more coming.
Hey, Grim.
Stop.
Crap, I don't know where to go.
Oh my
There's like
god,
5
a
of them in the
shotgun
house
makes.
now.
Oh
Well,
my god,
that's
you're not
I can't
kidding.
close the
upsetting.
front door.
Why would you?
So they left the front
What you
door open
did?
and surrounded.
Well, I learned a lesson.
Kid,
Did anybody die?
I'm bit.
he's gonna die.
freaked out.
All because
I'm
Fruit shot a
surrounded.
stupid gun.
I fucking did it on accident. Oh my god, I was trying to equip my baseball bat.
I can't get away.
I basically just get to listen to you guys have fun.
I know this is what classifies as fun. I think that
I'm dead.
boys they wanna have.
The door was open and they just streamed on all through.
Probably fine.
So I'm very upset. I tried to eat a thing
gonna
of
fix
tuna
this.
to satisfy my thirst because everybody knows canned tuna is very juicy.
Oh,
That didn't work though.
oh! I said, imagine just slurping up the entirety of all the juices in a can.
So the zombies all went to the corner. Oh,
On the
All right,
bright
then
side, I'm almost there.
You came at the worst possible time.
I haven't even gotten
It's
there
funny
yet.
you showing up on this particular day.
It's this day in particular. Get your fucking Half-Life
I'm
quotes
sorry. Fuck.
What? Oh shit!
third
No more.
day.
Oh shit! No more gas.
Right. I love that part of Half-Life.
That's the best chapter.
You know the part
Repair
whenever
pistol.
Gordon and Alex are in the sports car or whatever in episode 2,
Alright.
and then Gordon pulls over and drops off Alex and goes, "Oh shit, no more gas."
Well, good
It's,
news.
it's his
I've,
best quote in the entire game.
I've cleared the zombies out
And
of
then
the
afterwards he
house.
goes, beep, 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 and then drives off.
Bad news.
So, you think that a shotgun would kill a zombie? It doesn't. It just knocks him down.
Well, yeah, you have to aim for the head. You have to have high accuracy.
Shotgun.
You have to have high accuracy.
Or
Where's
we're
Andar?
shooting at point blank.
Yeah.
Still gonna be accurate, motherfucker.
No,
No,
so
I
I
think-
shoot at Jamal.
So have half the fucking.
Why do I hear a car alarm?
Half of the zombie is
Why do I?
broken.
Hey, thanks for the 4 tombstones and a thing of salt.
Oh, that's
Let's
not
go
a
with
car
the
alarm. That's a
popcorn.
burglar alarm.
Yeah, some houses have alarms.
Well, good news. I've attracted all the zombies somewhere else. That is really
All the
fucking
zombies
loud.
live in this house now, though.
Well, no. Now they want to live in the house of the burglar alarm. Jesus fucking Christ. Keep moving. You know, just, you know, everything's fine. Just go our way back around. It's fine. Grim, it's fine. Grim, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
I have some
Everything's
red paint.
fine.
Does anyone want some red paint? I hear if you drink it, it tastes like cherry.
I'll put some cigarettes for you.
Great, because my character is actually a smoker.
I'll pick some up for extra. Then.
Wait, is that really a thing?
There's
Yeah.
like 30 on my body.
I said smoking in the apocalypse would be such a horrible thing. To
I mean, most of the time, like, they're smokers before the apocalypse.
Why no? I said keeping. I said the keep, not this. The,
you know what would be the worst? A zombie outbreak happens and you have braces.
Oh,
Fuck.
what
That's
happens?
actually-
What's
That's
kind of bad
actually
with like?
horrifying.
What's wrong with that?
You-
I'm so
you know-
sorry.
Have you motherfuckers
I
had
had
braces?
I had your
I know.
backpack, so I just got turned into a zombie and they ran off.
Dude, imagine being in the zombie apocalypse and you have, like, IBS or something.
I mean, that's hate you so much.
When the zombie
What's wrong with
apocalypse.
having braces in the zombie apocalypse?
Have
Who
none
said
of you
take it
had
off?
braces?
You couldn't get them
I've
off.
had braces.
during a zombie
What do you mean you
apocalypse?
can't get them off? A fucking pair of pliers, or just eat an
Ah.
apple.
Oh my god, Andar, you fucking insane.
Oh,
You could just take, like,
They break before your teeth do. Trust me.
take a hammer and just smile and then hit them out.
So,
I
Andar, is this
found
something
it, I
you
found
can
That
another-
I've
ignore
caused
by
pain for
chance?
everybody in the audience.
Well, I've broken so many of them off. It's,
oh, jeez.
It's nothing.
So
Wait, where are you at?
I'll give you a hint. Here, I'm gonna take a picture.
Don't worry about where I'm at.
They're getting in.
So, weird question, Benny. What do you look like?
My character's shirtless.
Are we all
Jeez.
done?
That's
I'm
good. You're gonna.
scared.
Yeah, we're all pretty
That's
much
actually-
naked, actually.
That's good. Actually, that's a good way to find him. I'm gonna find the one shirtless zombie.
To be fair, yeah, it's kind of.
Oh, if
That's
I eat
actually
these
a good way.
strawberries, it'll help my my thirst.
He has a beard
Not
and
that much.
chest hair.
Great. Wasted food, god damn it.
Pants are blue.
My pants are blue.
Dark blue.
Yeah.
They might have look black.
All right. Well, God, the frying pan does suck. New was not wrong.
I
To
don't
be fair, though, my
think
character.
I want to eat uncooked eggs, just raw. So I'm gonna refrain from doing that.
What is salmonella for what 500?
Haven't you seen those movies? Gotta get strong.
They break before your teeth do, trust me.
That's just so fucked up. Because I think at one point I had to remove a broken brace and my dad actually used the pliers.
Oh.
It's not bad, honestly.
Andar, have you had braces before?
Yes!
Have you had someone pull them off?
Yeah. Yeah,
No, they're still in his throat.
Why didn't he throw?
Yeah, why are they in his throat?
He swallowed them by now. I mean, like, if Andar smiles, you don't see braces. Where are they? Oh, they're in his esophagus.
When Andar smiles, I just scream.
Whenever Andar smiles, a baby puppy dies. Andar's always angry.
The radio here's picking up a signal.
What does that
It's
mean?
me phoning for help. Don't you hear me?
No. Something.
Fucking kill me!
The president has released a statement. I understand the frustration and can hear you loud and clear. I understand.
saying
Fucking, I'm missing a fucking. I'm gonna die probably anyway. Eat shit and die. Oh, they just knocked him down. Are you kidding
Hey,
me?
that quote's from last Spookfest.
Well,
I'm severely depressed.
Same.
Zombies are really bad.
I think that's the end of me.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
Zombies hanging out on a wide road.
So I guess if you're attacked by more than 4 zombies, you just die.
Yeah,
There's
that's basically
something for me to stop and do.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Gotta lock myself in a room. Gotta lock myself in a room. No!
Oh, Benny, by the way, I found one of your dead bodies.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, where the fuck am I spawning? Okay, Jamal, what town are you in?
I'm not in.
Couldn't have had
I am
goddamn
on
can
a
opener?
fucking I'm on a can opener.
There's like 3 in our old house.
Should I go to Murdo?
I know, but you like.
I'm basically on a road running forever.
Did you find the corpse that had all the cans of food on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the house had no can opener, like a bunch of canned food.
He's eating them right now.
It's like nighttime. I can't see
Is that
shit.
emote a speech bubble with a taco in it? If so, well played.
So I've cleared out an entire house by myself.
Oh, this just in. Noob gets fucked. Cause of death, shotgun shot to the mouth.
Can you actually kill yourself?
Oh, I wonder if I can. I can't.
You jump out a window and.
Yeah, but I want to fucking like
That's
shotgun.
not really the
I want to
same,
stuck
though.
start a shotgun.
I'm gonna try heading to the old house.
Yeah. You might not want to do that.
Is it still like ransacked?
I wouldn't say ransacked. There's about 4 zombies in there. The rest left, and one of them's me. I managed to get out the rest of the zombies away using the fucking house alarm.
I'm gonna use a shotgun. If I'm gonna die, I might as well
fucking nighttime last. Jesus Christ.
It's real time.
Feels like it because daytime felt like it didn't last any time at all. What the fuck?
So here, I have an issue. The only exit I have is
These nuts.
running by about 30 zombies.
Go out like
These
a man.
nuts.
So Jamal, have you thought about what you're gonna do when you hit quote 666?
Yes.
Is it gonna be Satan? It's me.
It's not gonna be Satan, because Satan pisses me off.
Ooh, but I'm Satan, friend. Alright, shit's fucked. Uncooked popcorn.
Yeah, we're just gonna run.
It's fucked.
Shit. Uncle Sam's a motherfucker. Is that?
Everybody knows shit's fucked. I don't give a good goddamn.
I'm gonna make
this
quote
is-
666. This stream fucking sucks. Sincerely, Satan.
Okay, so I somehow met. So
Oh, excuse me.
note to self for anybody who cares, which is nobody, but I'm just like, shotguns are pretty good at pushing people back. They push back basically the entire horde of them.
Okay. What's
Nice.
the
I
catch?
found your zombie. Man, we had such a good thing going.
And fruit ruined it all.
Well, I was trying to equip a baseball bat, and my guy shot the gun. What
And
I've
instead I
learned
just pulled the
is,
trigger.
be careful what you're doing when you're loading your weapons. And also just never
So
generally...
where's the new house then?
We don't have a new house yet.
You guys are all fucking evicted.
I found a
Hey.
2-story that's
So
pretty good.
what happens if you get too depressed in this game?
Just use
Yeah,
Octoself.
I noticed I have that too. Getting a tad weepy.
Oh,
If you
I'm
get
severely
depressed-
depressed. Find a way to forget reality, and it's dark red.
If you
Read a
get
book.
really depressed, I'm going to assume that your
I can't
character
read a
probably.
book. I'm
I'm
illiterate.
not going to say
It's
kill
in the-
yourself because that just seems excessive and unrealistic.
But this is a pretty edgy game, probably possible.
It's not that edgy, actually.
I keep getting away with this.
What?
I keep dying. I keep almost dying. I
So what I
managed to
learned is
escape.
that if a gun gets shot once, basically every zombie in a mile-long radius comes in. If a car alarm
Yeah,
goes
oh
off,
dude, that's fucking. It
every
was.
zombie in a 2-mile-long radius comes in.
I don't know, man. I pulled every zombie in that area. That fucking that storage house is just fucked.
I mean, if you notice that there are more zombies now than before, I feel like this game is just going to end in that eventually there's not going to be any of us left.
Well, it is about like game about how you die.
Great, the TV's
Well,
on. That's what's
I
wrong.
cleared
with
out the old house.
That's good. What does that mean for us as a couple?
Means
Yeah.
I'll come back.
Panties. What are beta blockers exactly?
I don't know.
Mhm.
When am I going to hit the end of this road? You know what honestly freaked me out? If I just saw a car drive past.
Excuse me. If you stand the road and fucking a car just runs you by.
I'd be mad.
It's fucked. I fucking die. I die.
Damn, die, motherfucker.
I
Die,
think
mother-
I've fucking hit the halfway point of this.
Did you like spawn in the wrong city or something?
Who, me?
Yeah, 12. Yeah, you picked the wrong city
You
probably.
might have spawned in the wrong city.
If I did, then this just makes my fucking adventure even more worth it.
Are different cities like different maps? I'm confused.
No,
Not different map.
they're like, I don't know how to describe it.
Spawn points, basically.
Yeah.
I'm getting the vibe that's probably what you did.
I mean, probably. On the bright side, I think I'm just about there.
What are curtains under?
I don't think you can make curtains. I fucking looked. You just have to steal them.
Alright.
They might be under like sheets and stuff, and you need like a sewing kit, but you actually need to have a sewing kit and string as the catch, and I haven't had that yet.
Just find a spider and make it poop into your hands.
Silkworm, that would work.
Alright, so I have to
Wait,
get...
actually-
I've just went through here. I have to go all the way down this road, and then all the way down this road, and then eventually I'll find a gas station or some shit. And then from there, I'll die. We're making progress.
I found a duffel bag. Pretty cool.
Where the fuck is it? I just cleared the whole house out.
So is there like a way to take like a shower or something?
Nope. You're stuck looking the way you do forever.
Forever and ever.
Oh, I found 2
Christ,
dead
I'm just
zombies.
beating the fuck out of zombies, not dying.
I'd like to take that quote in context of real life. You can't make curtains, you have to steal them.
Alright, old house secure.
Can't we just move to a new house?
Why don't you
Was
guys
that,
build
was that,
your own
was
house?
that the whole goal of your plan? To make us just abandon our supplies?
No, why would I
Oh,
want to?
sweet dog food.
I mean, do you
Mr.
remember earlier whenever Fruit says, "Oh, you can't friendly fire people," or no, his direct quote was, "How do you friendly fire people?"
Look at this. Any plan that I have that involves me dying doesn't make any fucking sense from my point of view. What would I have to gain? No matter what I say, you're just gonna
The
blame me
distrust
for
of
everything.
us. The sadness of us.
I mean, I am pretty fucked up.
I'm just trying to find the old place so I can fucking bring all the food I found here. And then
I'm
attempt
gonna
to get
pull
some
Andar and
nails.
just fucking die apparently.
You know what I think I need to make this trip a little bit more extravagant?
I walk a lonely road.
Here we go. I don't care. This
I
gonna
got
get
some
fucking copyright strike.
The
We need some
day
fucking music. Fucking some Rusted Root motherfuckers.
What's Rusted Root?
That song I played in Ice Age. And
What's Ice
Matilda.
Age? Well, I haven't. No, TV.
Is it better? I like the idea of not being able to see what's behind you with like there's enemies, but the other hand, I fucking hate.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it is a dumb gameplay mechanic, but it makes it cool, I guess.
Well, I mean, in theory, you do have really high fucking vision, like in real life. It's not like you couldn't just turn around really quick.
Yeah.
Also, you'd be able to hear them, so you could probably have a general idea. But maybe your character's just blind, deaf, and dumb, so...
Blind's deaf, so...
Wait, did you actually make your character deaf?
Wait, you made your character deaf?
Yeah.
Do you not
Not
hear
deaf,
sound?
but hard hearing, yeah.
Okay.
I basically hear them when they're, like, in the house.
I thought, like, there is an actual deaf, like, trait.
Yeah,
It makes it so you can't hear anything.
Yep.
What happens if I jump out the second story window? Oh.
I removed curtains. Did they go in my... I don't...
Don't worry about it.
Did they just put a sheet in my bag? Was that one of those?
Yes,
Probably.
no, curtains are specifically going to be curtains. You can use them to fix bugs and shit.
I don't see what happened to her, where they went. I don't see them in my inventory.
Did you remove them all the way?
Yeah, I right-clicked on the window and said remove curtains. I clicked it and then it said whoop. And then they're gone.
How would you feel this is an MMO?
I was actually just about to say, imagine this with, like, a fucking 128-player server with PvP on.
Imagine this, but like...
Songs from the early 90s.
Wait, I found a house that's been barricaded. What the fuck? What the fuck?
Whose house is...
Dude, did you barricade a house by chance?
Nope.
I found a house that's...
1992.
And he's dead.
What happened?
I got killed. I think I found a house with people in it.
Shoot you?
No, but there was like 500 zombies outside. I don't know. That was weird.
I'm so fucking lost. Oh well.
Interesting choice. Alright, so I'm gonna get my character. I'm gonna be wearing no fucking things but purple pants. Because honestly... Are there people in that house? What the fuck?
I can already tell I'm gonna make this a fucking hold-on screen.
What?
Just this fucking sprite running down this fucking road.
Okay, I just... Okay, cool.
Jamal, I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
Why?
That's pretty cool. I was pretty healthy and I just died. Cool.
F to pay respects, my dude.
Great game.
Wait, this is the first streetlight I've seen in miles. I must be close to civilization. Oh, my little hand.
Can I just watch my character be a zombie the entire time?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. That's all I know where mine was.
That'd be actually pretty interesting. You could just kill yourself and just watch what happens if there were like actual NPCs in this game. I don't know what that's called. Paper, but well, it's on Flippy.
Oh my god, it worked! I started playing the
What?
song and, like, by the time it ended, I actually got the civilization. Holy fuck.
Wait, are you
I'm
finally
not
find
with
the
you
place?
guys, but I'm finally at a building where I can get shit to not die.
How have you not died so far?
I don't know. I haven't seen a zombie for miles, and now I just found, like, 90.
Hey, you want to tell me where you are if you haven't seen a zombie for miles?
Yeah, I like to see
in
that.
the middle of fucking nowhere. Like,
We
I'll
go
send
there
you the
sometimes.
fucking VOD afterwards. There's literally nothing.
If we can get an axe and some stuff, we could probably make a base in that area.
I had an axe.
You don't
So
want
if
to
I-
do that.
Does
If
reading
there's
a
no
book
way
make
of
it
faster
disappear?
travel, you're basically stuck walking
Yes,
miles.
once you finish a
in order
book,
to
it's
scavenge.
gone. You read it really
Never
hard,
liked
Benny.
that as a mechanic in video games. Read a
What?
book
No.
and it's gone.
Benny, you read it really hard.
Oh,
Then
like
you're
super
saying-
fucking hard.
I
Like,
think
You
oh,
read
it's
it
the
so
opposite.
hard that your eyes make it shoot out a laser, and then it burns and dies.
Elijah?
A laser.
Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood. I found a used car place. There's no cars. All the zombies stole them.
Crazy Bob's Tire Shack, you say.
Crazy Bob's Tire Shack.
I like how I need to find a place to go to the to go AFK and go to the bathroom, and I just went to the bathroom. Is fucking that's pretty safe, I guess, right?
Yeah, totally.
Oh my
Fuck,
god, I
hop
found
on
the
die.
trailer park. Wait, if I'm by the trailer park, I'd buy all that shit that I dropped when my character decided to drop all
Yeah,
of
you're
it.
not gonna like what you see when you go over there. I'll be honest.
Why? What? Dude, why is it on fire?
There's a lot of fucking zombies over there.
Why'd you set the place on fire? How'd you even do that?
So what does the keyring do?
It's just to hold your keys.
Keys for buildings, like you could lock people out and stuff like that. Set
Oh.
up safe houses.
Someday we'll be able to set up a safe house.
I'm
and
literally
build
at the
it.
old house, hiding in the shower, reading a book.
Everything's
Never
fine.
hide.
Books
Everything's
takes
fine.
forever.
Everything's fine.
Oh yeah, and I have the perk slow or the debuff slow reader, so it's taking me twice as long.
How about you?
Yeah,
Takes
so do
seconds.
I really
Takes
like
entire
watching
day.
Mastaonion streams. I like the time whenever he played Project Zomboid for Spookfest and he spent 2 hours walking and then he's gonna die as soon as he gets there.
There's a symbol flips like joke.
I mean, it is.
I saw this. This guy. He was tempted to starve for 4 hours and cried and went to sleep.
He vomited oatmeal and then died.
Fucking oatmeal. What the fuck's
Honestly,
with
I'm
oatmeal?
just-
I don't know.
I might just keep killing myself over and over again until I spawn close enough to the house.
Citrus wave. Citrus.
I feel like Jamal was doing it
Citrus.
wrong just by not killing
Citrus
himself.
Avenue, brother.
Good to note, the book does not disappear. Fruit was literally just fucking with you.
Oh,
Then
well.
why do
I
the
mean, it
books
would
want
get
in your
boring to read the
inventory?
same book over and over again. Find
I
more
read a
reading
generic
material.
book for like entertainment and that disappeared.
I read
Oh.
a magazine and it disappeared.
I read a foraging for beginners book to.
I
make my
said to
foraging
imagine,
skill higher.
like, huh, well, that's good to read. I guess I'll never need this again. You just burn it right in front of you.
Well, I guess magazines and generic books disappear then.
Well, I
but-
mean, it makes sense, I guess, because you can't read it over and again. I mean, I guess you would kind of get boring reading the same
but I
magazine
guess
over and over
fruit's
again.
just full of shit, so don't
I mean,
trust
you're
it.
already pretty full of shit. Let's be honest. Don't fucking say a word.
So I'm just gonna take what any useful stuff I can find.
You consume the knowledge, you eat the pages.
So, Noob, where
I
are you
mean-
at?
In my kitchen making food.
Where are you at, Noob?
I'm in a bathroom, just kind of crying as.
Give me a location, Noob.
I don't fucking know. I spawned in. You
Noob, if
Fucking-
you don't tell me, I'm gonna die.
die then. Fucking eat shit and die.
Alright, I have
Well.
finally gotten to a near civilization. If you
What
guys
if I-
are
what if
wondering
I
how
shot-
long a fucking day-night cycle works,
What the hell was
The
that?
fuck was
you guys
that?
heard that too?
Fuck?
That means
Okay
I'm close enough.
then.
You guys
Heard
hear
it.
the same
It's
shit
loud.
I do.
Fuck was that?
That was my
Something's coming.
character. That was my character, actually.
No,
Something's gonna be coming here in a minute. We should all probably be careful.
That was my character
Of course, the
thing.
second I get to you guys, I hear the most terrifying Wilhelm scream in existence.
It sounded like the fucking video like this. Show me your war face. Ah.
That was my fucking character dying.
That was not your character dying.
I'm gonna put all these books in my school
Okay,
bag.
so Noob, you're saying when my character was horribly getting mauled by zombies.
I only have one plank, but
I'm gonna be
there's
very
16
upset if I
of-
finally get to you guys and then Fruit Zombie kills me.
Stream's over. Fuck it.
How do I set up
It's like
enough
Fruit's
zombies
made
so
it
this
his
happens?
goal to fucking ruin Spookfest every year, even out of his control.
I don't understand why you keep saying I ruined Spookfest. Jesus.
You
Just a
kinda-
running gag.
Kidding. We joke there. No.
Wait, did I just hear a gun? Somebody just shooting a gun?
Alright, that scream has me paranoid now.
I keep telling you it was me.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, whatever. Fucking don't believe it then.
Alright?
Did you say don't bulimic?
Yes, Jamal, that's obviously what I just said. You know me. So, are you guys living a happy life?
Well, I'm finally near civilization that are near you guys.
Define near. Like
Do
near
you guys
Automata?
recognize a trailer park by any chance?
Yes.
Because I'm in a trailer park right now.
You're basically a little bit fucking north of us, I believe. You're gonna have to walk through a lot of shit, though.
Well, I'm going to the fucking bullshit medical place that you guys were talking
I
about.
like whoever the chuckle fuck was moving me over. I have no idea why. And I fucking was in the kitchen, so I couldn't come back and put myself back in the channel.
I can assure you that it was not me.
It was free.
I can assure you it was me.
Fuck you for.
Fuck you.
I'm about to go dumpster diving.
What did I do?
Fucking know what you did, piece of shit.
Bulimic, Hellenic, autistic.
They all mean the same thing in a sense.
Alright, let me try to figure out where the fuck I am right now.
Oh.
Was it really that orgasmic that you had to moan drinking a Pepsi?
I'm gonna eat this tea bag.
Don't. You.
Okay, Jelly, you got a map up still, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm at a farm.
You're at a farm?
Yeah.
Did you set up a farm or did you?
Is it big fields of dirt and hay and shit?
Yeah, I found a couple piles of hay, but I haven't found fields of hay, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it's not fields, it's more like 3 or 4
bundles. Yeah.
Is there like a little warehouse building or some shit?
Not that I can see, but if it's daytime now, I'll run outside once this food's done cooking, and then I'll check.
Did you ever think
Well, I'm
about that
heading that
bleach is
way.
like bleach is sort of like a poison that you
I
can
honestly,
put on
like,
weapons?
I would not be surprised if
Yeah.
it turns out I've been in a single-player campaign or whatever this entire fucking time. Jamal, you fucking retard.
I mean, Jamal, considering you've been putting in F every time someone dies, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
So I'm gonna eat an entire thing of ramen noodles
That's just
before
a
heading
global
out.
chat.
Jamal, I think
You think?
I think you're right, Jamal. I'll never question you again.
Good.
Jamal, why are you so wrong all the time?
You wanna know why I'm so wrong?
Why?
Because every single zombie sounds like Marge Simpson.
See, you knew you were gonna fucking
I'll
set
kill
off
you.
when you said that. You fucking knew.
What?
It was like a landmine of Marge Simpson noises.
I'll kill you, sweetie pie.
I'll kill you, sweetie pie.
Because zombies. I don't think zombies just start crumping.
How do I commit suicide?
Yeah, if only I knew.
What's the suicide button in this game?
Alright, I have lost where I am. Oh, I'm back in the trailer park. Okay.
Jamal, you're gonna want to head southwest from the trailer park.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kind of outrunning like a dozen or so zombies.
Oh my god, I think I found some sort of farm field. Is it daytime yet? I can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like dawn right now. Oh my god, I fucking love you,
Okay,
Dawn.
so
You
I
and your
found an
hot-ass
actual,
penguin.
like, barn. So I was at the farmhouse, and now I'm going to the actual barn.
Careful of the zombies in the farm.
All
So I
I'm
started
equipped with
reading
is
a
a
book.
crowbar that looks like a baseball bat,
If I interrupt my
my
meetings,
boxers,
does it
and a
start
few
over?
cans of
No,
vegetables.
it saves whatever page you were last on for that book.
Wait, is it an actual book that you read?
Oh, I see someone running. Oh, fruit.
Oh god.
Hey there.
Find somebody?
What's up? I turned off PvP. Can't hit me.
Do it anyways.
well.
What? I love
Alright,
that
then
Marge
let's go.
Simpson noise. That's my favorite personally.
I'm sorry, I can.
I
Also,
couldn't
I'm-
resist being fucking irritating.
So,
Yeah.
do you have any supplies by chance?
Do you got a can opener?
No, I have nothing.
Well, then we're fucked.
By the way, tip of the day, there's nothing like southwest of here.
Well, then I don't fucking know.
And I know what we can do. Hit the X button in the lower right corner.
Don't do that. He's gonna kill you.
We need to fight.
Oh, that's PvP.
Yeah.
I got a fucking shovel, man.
I have a board with a nail in it.
Man, take him by
I have
Take
a
me
board
by the ham.
if you
with a nail in it.
understand. I just wanna fucking die.
I just want to smear.
How the hell have I kept eggs fresh for like 8 days?
Eggs take a while.
They don't.
Yeah, but they've been inside of my sweaty fucking boxers.
Oh, sweet Jamal, I found some. Ew.
So, in relation
fuck.
to the old house, where would you guys say you are?
I died.
I don't even know where this old house is. How many houses have you guys
have no
been
idea.
to?
Jamal,
since
Jamal, I
fucking-
found Jamal, I found some whiskey for you.
Great, give it to me right now.
Alright, looks like I'm heading towards the beach.
Are you leaving a trail so you can find your way back?
Yes.
No,
That's actually
I'm
smart.
abandoning.
I
I
probably
grabbed
have...
every good thing from
eggs
old
I
house
could do
and
that
now
with.
abandoning it.
Welcome to hell, Andar. You ever been in Nam before?
You ever see a dead body?
Yes, noob. I've seen mine several times.
Oh hey, I'm at a baseball field. Maybe I can find a baseball bat.
If you head slightly northeast of the baseball field, you can find all that shit I dropped
Spitballs.
earlier. But probably don't go that way because I think noob fired a shotgun and attracted every zombie ever there.
Yeah.
Why would you?
In my defense, I found a shotgun. I was
Oh my
shortly
god, I
after a
found a
swarm.
dead zombie on the highway.
So instead of like taking a chance to lose it, I figured I'd see what happens if I shot it, and it turns out exactly what happened.
I also want to just mention, there's an extreme detail on your butt cheeks whenever you just have the boxers on.
I'm so loaded with shit. I got twice my carry weight, but it's all canned food.
Andar, do you have a can opener?
No!
Old house has like 5.
It's all the food that Betty had.
God, I want you to imagine starving to death because you have nothing to open a can of.
I'm
You've
sorry.
tried everything.
That's
just
actually
starve
the
to death.
plot of the book of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, is they travel several thousand miles through, like, the Arctic to find food. And then it's all just canned food and they have no can opener.
But how do they eat it if they have no
At
mouth?
least do it like fucking DayZ, where you can smash the can open and still get 10% of it or something.
God.
Can you
I'll
shoot the
never
cans
forget
open
that
there?
time that Andar got so fucking pissed off because he went to
What
go
do you
open up a
mean?
can of spaghetti and it gave him
That's
1 fucking percent.
Yeah, it's like what the fuck? They fucking explode the can.
Let's go into this construction yard and let's see what the fuck we can do here.
Okay.
Oh.
Alright,
Okay.
Andar, if you're still at that barnyard
Nothing.
type thing, I am on the highway that's right next to it.
Okay, we've gone south through the forest.
Please.
We're at a big empty field and there's a couple girders.
I found a laundromat.
What are you gonna do with that? Clean your clothes, you nerd?
Oh yeah, so for the type, if you go up and to the left, you'll find a like a little storage house. Don't go near it. That's where I shot the shotgun. That's ground zero.
Alright.
Round fucking 0.
Like really, dude, it's pretty. Oh, some brick toys.
Do you want some ammo fruit?
For the 0 gun I have?
Exactly.
Fuck.
If you can, try to beat me on this highway, please.
I don't know where the road is. Well, fruit, we're fighting.
I have a fucking rolling pin. I'll CC the man. I'm gonna need you to fucking kill him though.
Where are you guys?
Well, which forest are you in?
I don't know.
We're in that one.
I don't even know what a second player in this game looks like.
It's like you, but not.
Me and Granny, what's her face, and fucking Andar killing Zambambos.
Granny, what? Is there an NPC?
No, I'm
Big Joel.
Granny.
Hey, I found a body.
Okay.
Alright, I am
Well,
on the
according
road.
to-
I'm heading into that fucking barnyard.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to go south of that.
Which way south?
Down!
Well, yeah,
Andar,
I know
you're like
that
a-
shit, Dick.
Well,
like your fucking
why'd you ask what?
I'm
fucking-
saying...
so-
Okay, look,
Round.
if I'm looking this direction, what is saying that this way is not north?
Oh my god, we found a road.
We found a road.
Apparently I'm anxious though, and queasy.
Well, I'm a little sad. Can I?
You know what it's like to be severely depressed?
Yes.
Oh, you weren't kidding about that place being ground zero. I just barely got a glimpse of it.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up, isn't it?
Okay,
It's like
we
40
found a
zombies
spot where
in.
3 fucking roads meet up.
Alright, let's kill this zombie here so Jamal knows.
You think that you thought I was joking type? No,
You
that's
said
that's
3
fucked up there.
roads meet up?
Yeah,
Shit.
there's 1 dirt road and 1 pavement.
I found a laundry facilities.
Oh, fuck it, I probably have to keep going that way.
Okay,
I know where.
there you go.
Stay
Well,
right
no,
where you are.
No, it's like in the back of the house.
Andor, why are you
Oh,
digging?
never mind.
Maybe by the time Dale gets here, we can fucking plant some.
Andor, that
You
fucking...
fucking dickhead.
You're way soon.
Maybe we'll grow an apple tree by the time Jamal gets here.
Alright, Andor, which way do you want to go? I don't know, fucking...
Is there like a drink or hunger meter so I can see how hungry?
On the
There's
right.
the upper right corner that
Can I get
tells you.
salad?
Upper right corner.
Jesus
There's nothing
Christ,
over
Jamal.
there.
Fruit, slow the fuck down. I'm over encumbered.
Oh, and I'm also a sprinter.
Is there like a
Nothing in the
big,
upper corner.
like, concrete nothing near you guys?
No.
Fuck,
Unless
where
you're
the
in a
hell
road.
am I then? You said where 3 roads meet up. One's a dirt road and then...
One's a broken ass fucking concrete road.
Yeah, once the paved road's going southeast and southwest, and the dirt road's going northeast.
northeast.
Andor, do you want me to take some of your canned food for you?
Sure.
Oh, fuck.
You good?
Alright, I think I see where you guys are.
No, I still got another fucking, like, 7 pounds.
Hey, can you guys
can't.
plant me a fucking apple tree? I'm a
Plant
red
you
delicious.
a soup tree.
Soup tree's good.
A soup tree.
Alright, I really
I-
hope this is the way that you guys are.
How about a whiskey tree?
Yeah, give me a whiskey tree. I prefer rye.
I just found trapping for beginners.
So apparently, Andor,
Really
I
get
might...
better.
Second, I might be... Oh, I'm
Sorry.
infected.
Are you guys by the railroad track?
No.
I might die, but let's just keep going.
Thanks for the 5, Terry.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably not gonna survive this trip.
Alright, listen, if I've walked pretty much across the country...
Yeah, but you weren't injured.
I was, actually. I could just kept bandaging myself.
Oh, we found houses.
Where? Describe houses.
There's a single 2-story house.
God, please give me something. Oh my god, the door's unlocked.
Paved road that goes southwest.
Oh my god, I found a survivor. I mean,
Like
they're not really a survivor anymore, but... Andor, they have 2 shotguns.
Is there a grill on their patio out back?
Oh fuck, you weren't kidding.
Andor, please.
Can I have some of that shotgun ammo back that I just gave you? He wasn't fucking kidding. There's actually 2 shotguns.
Andor, I want to fucking live.
Oh my god.
Disinfectant.
Guys, I found the planted trees. I found dead zombies.
Okay, keep going down into the left.
I gotta see people. Oh
Okay,
my
you have
God.
shotguns. You know what to
I
do.
swear to God.
Alright,
For
Andor.
noob's sake. I know where that
There you
fucker lives. There's at least
Andor.
4 or 5 liquor stores on the same street he lives on.
Jesus.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Andor, I might
Okay,
die
everybody.
unless I can get some
Oh my god,
disinfectant.
yes! Finally! Finally!
Jesus.
Jamal. Jamal, do you have any disinfectant? Please.
I
Go.
don't have anything.
Why do...
Oh.
Jamal, I'm gonna die. And then my character's gonna kill all of you.
Alright, guys, that's the end of the stream. Good night, everybody.
Jamal, do you have a can opener?
Hey, are you serious?
Can I have some fucking shotgun shells?
Sure.
So I managed to take refuge in a small.
Jamal, here's a shotgun.
I need
small
to get
little
water.
area.
I haven't drank for fucking days.
So, Jamal, are you telling me you don't have anything that could assist me in any way from dying of fucking...
I have,
There's like 5 zombies out back.
I have a dirty rag, a couple of fresh eggs. I have some pepper.
I should probably find a house with clean clothes now.
Alright, now that I've done walking across the entire country.
Can we just fucking go and loot some places so I can find something to not die? Please? There's nothing left, Jamal. Let's just go, please. For the love of God. Follow me.
Where's Andor?
We'll go down the road.
Oh, 1 second, I'm just checking the rooms upstairs.
I don't trust this fella. How many
Jamal,
how many walkers have you killed? How many
Um,
people have you
I found a
killed?
tote bag!
won't matter in a second when I inevitably fucking die here.
Tote life.
Tote life.
Sir, something. You
Just
can't
something
actually
weird
climb
about
fences.
seeing a shirtless, bearded man walk out of a building holding a
With a
shovel.
shovel.
Where are you guys?
We're still in the house.
Fucking, I'm leaving. I'm
I've
gonna go
seen
down the road.
Oh shit, Andor! Oh, there's no PvP, that's right. Fucking double team this bitch.
Fucking stomp her in the dick.
So I'm in some kind of rich neighborhood.
You probably in the neighborhood we were in and all died in. Or not all of us died, but, you know.
There's just lots of two-story, relatively large buildings.
We did it, Andor.
No, I'm kind of surprised. There's not a single fucking car in this entire
gazebo.
town. I'm surprised that there's not a single car. Parking spaces.
Oh,
Who the
Holy shit, holy shit, holy
we
shit.
should run away, Andor.
Damn, well, did you fucking shoot?
No, I don't have a gun.
Oh,
I have
God.
10 bullets.
Oh,
That was
God.
fruit.
Who the
Oh god.
Drew, why did you just fucking shoot at us?
Oh no, it's.
I didn't shoot at
it's
you guys, what the
Trail
fuck?
to Electric Boogaloo.
Oh, shut the fuck up, Grimwood. I'm fucking trying to defend myself. I don't know where you guys are.
How do
I'm in
I...
the
You left us.
Yeah, I know, because I couldn't find you guys. You disappeared, and I didn't see you anymore, so I'm like, well, fuck.
Sure, corn dog.
Said we were up.
Okay, I figured it out. How do I reduce panic?
Just.
You kick him out of the
You
group.
Yeah, just kind of. kind of just calm down, I guess. I don't.
Calm down, don't get a big dick.
Andor, I just want to say your character looks like Logan. Like, I've seen enough shirtless Logan to see that.
Oh, rip.
Oh shit.
Well, might as well watch my character.
Yeah, watch him kill me.
I think I went down to the house. that knew-
This is gonna suck.
Hey, Andor, I think my zombie's right behind you.
You're chasing 2 half-naked people with shovels?
Yes.
Well, you have a shovel, I have a baseball bat that's actually a crowbar, so...
Huh, I actually found ammo for a gun. I mean, I'm not gonna use it.
Oh
but
boy, I'm back where I spawned.
So what's the point of guns exactly in this game, then?
They are good at defending, they're just gonna get you killed, too.
Well, it doesn't... It seems like it's kind of pointless, because, like,
It's
if
like
guns
DayZ.
just attract zombies to your
It's
location...
kind of. I feel it's kind of like.
Apparently you can't open canned food with,
A gun?
No, when you're moving? Okay.
Ooh, I got some clean clothes.
Must be a pinball machine cabinet.
I'm in a trailer park now, I guess.
Oh, we're here.
You're in the trailer park?
Take me to
Yeah.
your leader.
Sure.
Is it going for the screen to go completely fucking green? There we go. Build
We
a tree.
might be on the west side of it right now. Or the northwest side
Alright,
of
well,
it.
I'm gonna be heading your way. I just looked, my character looked through a window and there was 50 zombies and immediately got scared and ran off.
Andor, don't worry, I'm watching our 6. I'm also watching the 1, 2,
I'm also
3,
watching our
4,
7, 8,
5.
and 9.
I
7,
apparently
8,
have
9,
large
10, 11,
glass
and 12.
shards. Can I remove those with tweezers?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's what
tweezers.
tweezers are for.
But how do... Like, I right-click and it just says equip or drop. There's no...
No, you have to click your health tab, which is like the little
The
heart.
heart symbol.
This is like
Okay.
top-down armor bullshit.
Let's- think that's the idea. New killer.
Andor, this is your escort quest. Is that you eating?
Yes.
Alright, because for some reason it's coming from, like, a mile away. The sound effect for it.
Oh, I was gonna
It
say,
sounded like that
let's-
house was eating something.
Ooh, avocado toast.
Fuck millennial.
Noob. Hey, Noob, question.
Sure.
Fuck. Say Noob? Or not Noob, Jamal.
No, 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 no.
Is that seriously as
Piece of
fast
shit,
as you
stop
can walk?
fucking... Yes, I'm sprinting right now.
Oh no, I'm not even. See, Andor.
Bye.
As he fades away.
It works, Andrew.
I was gonna say, have you noticed that there's
I can
like just
always
random
shoot
dead
them.
people that aren't us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found a few.
I think I found my old body.
Okay, fuck all the seeds.
Andor, you
Okay,
dropped
how
your
do you-
bag of potato chips.
I had to equip the tweezers
Oh,
to use them.
fuck.
What did you just drop? Is that a battery?
Yeah, it's a battery.
Do you need
But
that?
no, there's like fucking so many... Fuck off!
Just shoot the Mandar. Use your gun.
Don't do that.
Don't do that, don't do it. No, 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 no. Andor, look behind us, Andor! Andor! No!
Who's Andrew Kurz?
Me.
Andor.
I found your zombie! Fucker. I killed him.
Jesus.
Wow, Grim, you're a real shitbag.
I can't help it, he came after me.
Andor, I think you might have fucked us.
I'll...
Serenity Day, you've not seen the first hand what happens. It's
There's
really
too many I can't even shoot. They're too fucking close.
it's horrible. It's really
No, 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 no.
Fuck.
Fucking Mardi Gras is crazy this year.
Oh my god, there's so many.
I told you not to do it, but you fucking didn't listen.
Oh my god, there's so many.
I love how Nibs effectively ruined the trailer park forever.
I mean,
Yeah, I went and looked at the warehouse again and it's still goddamn full.
yeah, it was horrible in there.
How am I already...
Oh my god.
Honestly, I'm gonna stop spawning in this fucking town. This place sucks. Just spawn somewhere else.
Pull me and spawn fucking
Where did
miles
you go?
away.
What direction did you go?
I went down the road and then up the road.
Then up the road, okay.
So it's,
Before the construction pylons?
I don't even know. I'm by a pancake.
Okay,
mix.
where I see you, I see you, I see you. Don't go that way.
Oh
Oh no.
Oh, no.
I dropped half my shit to be able to start running. Oh god. I have no more food anymore. It's all gone.
How close are we to fucking your place?
I don't know, but I got one fucking shotgun round left.
Jesus, that for what? This
There's
stuff
a
for
legitimate fucking. You remember the episode of The Walking Dead where they have to take the horde and take it to another fucking location? That's fucking following us right now.
I told you guys.
Oh,
I'm fucking
this is the road I was at before. Okay, let's try and go into this fucking spiffos.
Spiffos. Let's go get spiffy.
You know,
Oh,
I'm
there's
surprised.
fucking zombies in the inside.
I
Don't worry,
equipped a
we're
tote
equipped with
bag
a
and
shovel
things
and a
are looking really good now.
Fucking crowbar.
you know, relative to how many houses there are in this game, I don't think there should be any zombies. I just bled out, by the way.
Oh my god.
Yeah, let's fight. Let's spawn in fucking Rosewood.
Finding a shit ton of nails.
You said you're really yelling
I
it.
guess we're not getting in the spiffos. Let's try this generic office building.
Well, I broke the window, but there's probably too many people going to it now.
Oh
Let's
shit,
go
there's
to
quite a
Rose.
bit
Oh,
of
there's a lot of Zambos.
Let's just
Zambambos.
let's just get takeout instead. Fuck this place.
Fuck, dude, every fucking house is looted. Oh my god, I found ammo. Oh my god, I found a jar and some tissues. I can masturbate
I'm still
to this.
severely depressed.
I can
Tissues?
Would you
masturbate
not
to this.
think?
So if your character's sick, they don't make noise when coughing or sneezing.
Or they do make noise, they don't.
They
They
don't.
don't. So if you
Oh.
got a... Oh, I found a sleeping bag?
Oh, nice! You can rest anywhere, basically.
But it's really heavy.
My character is
At least 1
Yeah.
pound.
exhausted.
You need a backpack or a tote bag.
I do.
Yeah, specifically a tote bag, because, you know, totes.
Those my goats.
Fuck you. Fuck you too.
Don't
noob.
be jealous just because I have a tote bag.
I'll find you, Grim. You're next on my
Camel,
list.
what are you doing?
I'm in the trailer
was
park
just
with all the
checking.
zombies noob attracted.
Why would you
so
ever go
ahead.
back to
Find like a
fucking trailer
sandwich
park?
underwater. Or
Because there's a lot of stuff you guys missed.
Maybe
I
find
know
a
it's kinda busy
sandwich
running
or
away.
half drank
I mean, there's-
bottle of water.
Jamal, Grim, I hate to say there's a reason we missed it. It's because this is shit show
Oh,
after
shit.
it was there. As usual, noob killed my trailer park family.
As usual.
Well,
Andor, where'd you go?
I'm stuck in the fucking horde.
Don't go into the
Wait.
woods. They slow you down.
No, I went through a clearing.
Can
I
you
like
repair
remove-
windows?
Yeah.
Oh my-
or remove a door from its hinges.
You can vault fences.
In that,
I thought you said you couldn't, noob.
I found out a few
I
minutes
said
ago.
you
actually.
couldn't. I didn't know how to do it.
You hit E. I might be done here actually soon because I want to fucking do shit. Oh,
I'm
where's
eating a
this house?
whole onion. Onion.
Oh no, this house is alarmed. Even though the door's unlocked, which makes no sense. Well,
Andor,
Time
be
to
my
go.
escort quest. Show me where to go.
Oh,
He's
not this
escort.
building. Not this building.
keep running, just keep running. Zombies will leave you alone if you just keep running.
Maybe this one. Fuck it. This one. No, never mind. Too many. Fuck.
Is there a way to turn the house alarm off?
You have to do that during pre-planning.
I hate you.
I know.
No, but Jamal, you're a cool guy. But stop. Stop. I wish this game wasn't set in Kentucky.
Fuck it.
There are maps, like maps on the workshop that people have made.
Interesting.
Remove the glass before you jump through.
How do you do that?
Right click it.
Remove broken glass.
Rainbow monkeys.
Also
hate you.
very.
Right.
Oh, cool. It's
Ah.
just Friday. Oh, shit.
Andor! Chunky, bring love wherever they go. Everybody in a big rainbow.
Why is it that Terry only donates to me whenever we kill zombies?
Terry is sad because he cannot join us.
Harry's
Thank
killing
you
zombies.
for the 5 foreheads.
Jamal, how much money have you made this Spookfest?
A decent amount.
It says I have terminal damage. Does that mean nothing I can do can save myself?
Probably not.
You probably are gonna die actually if you have terminal. But that, to be fair, I'm just assuming because that's what terminal means.
What you eating over there, Andor?
Oops, I accidentally dropped my can opener back there.
Oh, I got
I
one.
died.
Sorry, buddy.
Here, Andor.
Gee, Jamal, you didn't put an F. I'm surprised.
I'm too busy right now. I'm actually doing something.
I'm gonna head back to the rich neighborhood.
Andor, you there? You got the can opener.
Is there like a silencer in this game that you can use? You are in Kentucky.
That is true.
Remember, Growing, silencers are legal in like 48 states.
Legal people license.
Oh fuck, you scared me. I thought you
They're
were
also
a zombie.
sold in 38 states.
I mean, there is a zombie.
I know, I thought you were another one.
I'm just gonna kill myself again. I'm gonna kill myself and then...
Fucking toilets.
Bunch of nails. What are nails even used for?
You can make things with them.
hoarding
Barricades.
things. Barricades and making furniture.
There's a crafting system in this game, buddy.
I wouldn't know. For so far, this is just a walking simulator.
Oh!
I'm taking it.
Oh,
I'm probably never gonna use it, but I have 10 bullets for it.
okay, you take it, because I lost
Oh my God,
pistol
cigarettes.
ammo. I lost
Finally,
my pistol ammo somewhere.
I grabbed some cigarettes because that.
Oh
will
fuck,
actually
there's a
help.
zombie in here!
Hold on, I'm just smoking a square.
Oh shit, my shovel broke! Fuck!
Fucking weapons could break.
Yes!
Oh no.
Fucking screwdriver to the rescue! Killed her in one hit.
Drop this hammer. Drop these keys.
It really sucks when you spawn in a house with a zombie in it. What does hairspray do? Can I make this zombie?
Oh fuck, I don't
bleach?
have a lighter. Damn it.
I don't have any matches, sorry.
You what?
I spawned in a house I was in earlier. So I'm actually kind of close to where I died before.
Where the fuck
That's
did
good.
Sambo go? Oh, there she is.
Sambo? Someone say Sambo?
Hey, a video game.
Jim, where are you at?
I'm in the going past the little break room thing.
I don't know.
Crap. I decided to spawn without a shirt, but then I realized I could take it off and rip it apart for...
I think it's midnight, by the way. Clocks are chiming. Or that's the music, I don't know.
Oh, there's more 9mm.
Oh, cool. I also just found
Talk about
a
fucking
dead
school
rat.
shooting.
Why is there just a dead rat in here?
Well, see, that makes more sense than having fucking ammo in a classroom.
Fair point, I guess. I mean, this is
No,
Kentucky
right.
as well.
Okay,
gotta
this
be-
screwdriver is actually pretty fucking good. Wait a minute.
So I'm a little bit afraid of holding this pistol, because one, the way that I'm holding it.
Well,
Yeah, that's just sort of how you hold guns in this game. It's a bit weird.
Alright.
well, if you want, I do have the shooting ability with it. I'll leave that up to you.
Don't shoot guns. It's not worth it. It's never fucking worth it.
I mean,
I
I
feel
kind
like
of want
guns-
to just make a ground zero like Noob did.
We're in the fucking gym changing room
Yes.
where there's like.
Wait, why
all
is
those
there a
little
gym
figureheads.
changing room? There's no gym in this fucking school.
I'll try and locate the school.
Terry
so
says
along the
half
main
the elementary
highway.
school teachers secretly had handguns in their desk in
Like, if I
Kentucky.
head north...
Oh, shotgun shells.
Oh,
Perfect.
Andrew, there's a
Did
golf
someone
club
say
over
make
here
a
for
school
you.
shooting? Why are the zombies
The
faster?
golf club looks
all of
pretty
a
good.
sudden?
There's a golf club in there.
Maybe they follow the same thing as Dying Light, where like at nighttime they're faster.
You mean Dead Rising?
Oh, a box of
Same thing.
sparklers,
No.
some canned beans, dry ramen
think you're
noodles
thinking
outside
of
of the
Dead Rising,
packaging.
dude.
So,
I've
along the
never
main
put
highway, northeast, southwest from the trailer park, where...
Oh my god, I found a house from earlier. I think it's been burned down though.
No, that's cool.
Oh, so apparently you can burn down houses in this game. So be careful if you're trying to use an oven and fucking lighters, I guess.
Take me to the others.
What do you want to do?
Take me to the others.
Can I use bleach to disinfect?
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Bleach is explicitly used for cleaning clothes. That's all it's used for. And if you
Suicide.
You
want,
should be able to like swish it around in your mouth to get like rid of that lingering feeling.
that
Of livelihood?
Lingering feeling of life.
Yeah.
I'm feeling way
Oh,
too
you can
alive
actually
right
move all
now.
these desks.
Yeah. You know
I
that?
didn't know that. No.
Hey everyone, Shoe Nice here, trying to survive the zombie apocalypse.
So basically,
So basically, we're in a zombie apocalypse, and you need to swish it up a bit. I recommend bleach.
So one of my
So
abilities,
basically.
one of my things is I'm illiterate, so let's see if I can even attempt to read this magazine.
You can read it, just slow as fuck.
Oh my god, I found a pool cue. Can I put nails in it?
What happened to my magazine? I lost it.
you get angry and just throw it away.
What happened to
Is
my
there-
magazine? I lost it.
Is there any way to get the zombies to just fuck off?
What happened to
Kill
the
them.
magazine?
Well, Grim, that's not as easy as you'd think.
All right, I
Yeah.
lost the
I'm
magazine.
well aware of that.
Oh, okay.
If only I had some sort of shotgun that had like 50 shells.
I remember you guys were talking about this earlier. What happened to the magazine?
We don't know.
Once you read it, it's gone.
We think if you read it, it's gone. Because you really do some intense reading.
Well, fuck it. I have a book now. I'm gonna save this for whenever I get to a very suitable location.
Oh, silver
What
and
would you want to
ore.
stream RuneScape? Oh, you know, I just kind of had the idea of it.
Gemma, what are you doing?
I'm trying to find a fucking lighter so I can light my goddamn cigarettes. Dad
I
needs
think I
some
found
fucking nicotine.
I think I'll just make this little house my area of operation.
Like, fuck, it's like 2 o'clock. I might call it a night here if I die anytime soon. See?
Hammer. Yes, please.
I think I might have found where Jamal spawned when he said he found nothing but fields.
That was a while ago.
I've been running to the top left randomly, and I've been stuck in the forest. I'm lost.
There is no escape. Man, I like this one texture they've used for grass. I love tiles.
You get a Diablo 1 feeling out of this.
It's like a much worse. But
Well,
noob,
do you want
zombies
to
don't
attempt
exist.
going through in the night, Andor?
Sure.
Noob, you know that
Let's do
Uncle
it.
Deckard is just full of shit. There aren't undead. Uncle Deckard's just lying again.
Yeah, again.
Oh hell, I gotta eat before I go.
Looks like you gotta give Uncle Deckard his pills again. Leah, there's a suppository.
Ah!
Fuck it, might as well get naked. At least make this fun to watch. Someone finds me, they'll be like, whoa, why is there a naked woman holding a pool cue? What sort of kinky thing have I found?
How do I wash clothes? Do I have to find a laundry machine?
You have to find soap as well.
I thought I had more. Oh, there they are.
You need at least
I just hear a fucking zipper.
You need soap and water. So if you find a sink
Damn,
and you
I thought
have
my
soap,
dick
you can
was
wash your
bigger.
clothes.
Where's my dick?
What happened to it?
Yeah,
I thought I
found
had
something.
more 9mm rounds, and they were in my
I
backpack.
had more
all
of
the
my
time.
pants.
Still can't find that fucking magazine though.
Well, Lisa Gonzalez.
If you read it once, it disappears.
Explodes.
That's bullshit because I started reading it and I actually hit W and I went forward and lost it forever.
It was probably on the floor. So let's get the fuck out of here.
Let's get the fuck out
Luckily,
of
if you
here.
open the door from the inside, it's
It's like Half-Life.
So apparently, survivors.
We going
try not to
pistols?
piss these off, but
So apparently, there are
Oh,
actually
fuck.
NPCs in this game.
And
no, Jamel, that's a fence. Don't go that way.
Okay, I was just about to say you lead the way because I don't know where I'm going.
We would have
was
got
that for?
trapped in there.
So there are survivors in this game. Apparently, they do fortify houses. They do look for loot, and they can work together with you or try to kill you.
Did the power go out?
Yeah,
No, it's nighttime.
No, but like the lights just all switched off.
the power
No,
could have gone
The
out.
power at my house is still on.
I just found an axe.
Nice.
Andor, what are you doing?
Trying to pick up. Oh man, I didn't know there was a fucking zombie right there.
I'm running up and to the left until I find something.
Oh, let's get the fuck out. There's way too many zombies coming out of the building.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
just
shit,
they
I
kept
got hit
coming
too.
in. Oh fuck. Well,
I have bandages though.
yeah. If you can stop, I can cover you. Bandages don't take too long. Can do it now.
Yeah, we're chunky. I wanna fuck you.
Might want to start moving.
Hold on, hold on.
Why the
Alright, we're
fuck-
gonna-
Jamal!
Jesus Christ, why is this map so fucking big? And there's only like towns in one part of it.
You can just pick up bodies?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's if your character's afraid of
Corpse.
corpses.
Other than the 20 behind us, I think we're clear. Oh fuck, I had opened my mouth, didn't I? Let's go a little bit up and go on the road or off the road to try.
Oh,
and...
I was zoomed in slightly. I was wondering what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh shit! Yeah, walk through
Oh
forest.
shit! It's dark as fuck in here. I can't see anything. And we're separated.
Okay, let's get back on the road. Fuck.
Of course, the game's going to fuck me by sending a horde my
So
way.
we'll get back on the road. Keep going the same direction.
It's gonna be very grim if you're the only person in the area.
Yoink. Batting 1,000.
Can't seem to close a door.
Oh my god, I found a fucking road. Please, for the love of God, let this road lead somewhere. I don't want to turn into Jamal and be in a walking simulator the rest of my life.
Yeah, I spent an hour doing that, by the way.
Why?
Because I'm with my good friend Andar now.
I feel like if this game was a little bit...
You know, he was a corporal.
His name's Anders.
Sorry. I will never disrespect the veteran Ander again.
I'm lost in the woods. Does anybody drink whiskey and take some sleeping pills that will kill me?
In real life? Or
no, really. Yes.
I mean, Noob does have a wireless headset.
Yeah. No, I'm lost in the woods, guys. In the middle of Pittsburgh. Wait, I think I see clearing. Maybe I won't kill myself. Oh no, I found...
Is this game 3D or pixelated? I can't tell.
I can't tell either. Quick question, Jamal. I'm asking a quick question. Was that road you were stuck on? Was there any like lanes?
No.
Okay, where's my whiskey?
Drink bleach.
Take some sleeping pills. Take pills and drink all of the whiskey.
I left some bleach on the road that leads nowhere. The next wait.
So
why don't I just drink the bleach?
Because we're all
If we
pussies.
lost
If I
the option
fucking
to-
went through all this hell, you guys should too, at least.
Fuck that, I have bleach.
I wish I had bleach.
I had the opportunity.
Yeah, let's try and find a fucking house to...
Drink that bleach, baby.
Well, you've got a better understanding of where they are than I do.
So apparently drinking the bleach makes me severely depressed.
Take pills. Take sleeping pills. Take sleeping. I don't know how many. I'm taking them all.
So does your character actually commit like suicide if they're too depressed?
I mean,
Let's
I've
find
been
out.
severely
Oh, it
depressed
worked!
for roughly like.
Wait, does that actually work? So wait,
Jamal,
you can drink whiskey and sleeping pills and it actually kills you?
I had like 7 sleeping pills. So I just fucking downed a whole bottle of whiskey, and I started just taking pills like in thick bags.
Sounds
I'm
like
very
my
surprised
life.
that it does that.
This house is clear.
Alright.
It's amazing. Oh, it's
How do you
glorious.
get in? Where'd you
There's
get
a
in?
window. No, go the other way.
Oh, I'm happy I can finally fucking
I'm
beat
fucking
that.
lost
live.
as shit.
Did
you take the
It's
glass
the second
out?
window. Yeah, I took it out. Oh fuck! Now you got them banging on the front door.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Is the one with the table in front of it?
Yeah, you fucking passed it. It's the
I
the
see
one
it.
on
It
the
looks
left.
like there's still glass in it from what I can see.
There's not. Just fucking do it.
I'm trying.
I'll even open up the other one. The other one's open for you too.
Just give me a second. I'm fucking doing some hula dances with some girls.
Are there cars in this game?
I haven't seen a single one.
Climb through,
I
climb
haven't
through, climb through.
I feel like
Oh,
having
shit.
a car is pretty nice.
Alright, I did not expect that to happen.
Come on, I'm severely depressed. Just let me
Sentient
fucking
ass
die.
motherfucker.
Just let my character have a heart attack and die,
Mom, I'm
please.
sorry that
What the fuck?
on the bright side, doing that made me not turn into a zombie because I guess I wasn't infected.
No, if you just die normally, you don't become a zombie.
Right click and close all the curtains.
Hold on,
We
I'm
actually
bandaging
I
myself.
found a few dead survivors actually, and they didn't turn to zombies because they just sort of
Off themselves?
starved to death. Yeah, they just sort of either shot themselves or they starved to death in their own house.
Oh, it's fucking hilarious.
There's a zombie inside the house there.
There's a zombie on your lawn.
Thanks for the
We got
5
one.
tryhards. But that's what we are right now.
He's in the storage room down here.
It's hard to say if I'm trying hard because I just feel like I'm trapped for a turn.
I don't know how I feel at that. I mean, I don't know if it's true, Jamal, because I literally was off my. I mean, I don't know if it's 30 times. Find some cologne though. Can I
Drink
use it?
it.
I can. Oh, I can put.
Oh shit, this door's just wide open.
Please, for the love of God, let me find something. I need this.
Well, I'm gonna grab 2 things of bleach just in case.
Yeah, take bleach with you just on the off chance.
In case I need to
In
fucking.
case you immediately need to kill yourself.
I mean, yeah.
Ooh, I found a flashlight.
Flashlight?
Yeah, I found a flashlight.
Flashlight and bleach is the only thing you need in life.
How come there aren't flashlights in this game?
Alright, just grab them.
Oh, okay. Well, you know when you break the glass on a flashlight and then like shove like a bunch of sausage meat in there? Call it a flashlight?
Yeah.
That's all I was wondering.
Oh, dude, peanut butter.
Did someone say peanut butter?
What is this
Oh,
fucking hell?
I found some red wine.
Jamal's getting drunk tonight.
Be sure to take some fucking sleeping pills.
I think if you just take a whole bunch of sleeping pills, it kills you. Cause I don't know what's the kind of thing I do because I just took like 7 sleeping pills.
You need 7 boxes.
Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna start cooking all this food. Okay.
Gotcha. Canned bologna,
Gotcha.
my favorite.
Ugh.
I feel like if there was a version of this game that didn't have zombies in it, but like something else, it would actually be pretty fucking cool.
I mean, I think
Like,
this game's pretty fucking cool. I'm having fun with it.
it's cool, but God, the map structure. I feel like if they added drivable cars, though.
There's a mod
Drive-
for that. It doesn't work in multiplayer, though.
Oh, wait, did you Google this?
No, I saw it on the Steam Workshop. Terry says give him your copy.
I just read something. I'm at the old house.
Terry, I can't do that. I've played more than 2 hours. Again,
No,
I'm
he's
just
saying
bummed
give
out
him
because...
your account.
Fuck that. Again, I'm just pissed off because I'm going through Jamal's fucking running infinitely through space and time until I find
Alright,
something.
here's what you do.
I only have one thing of bleach.
Here's what you do.
Chug it down, all of it.
I did do.
Put on some Rusted Root and start running, and whenever the song ends, you'll find civilization again.
Who's left?
It was Ririk. He was here the whole time.
Oh god.
Yeah, he was.
Look, noob, I don't have enough bleach.
Is it
Like,
bad
I
that,
have
like,
one
since
thing of
Ririk
bleach.
doesn't talk, I can identify the sounds that his microphone makes? Like, whenever we're all talking, and then I just suddenly hear Ririk's feedback. Like, not that it's bad or anything, there is no real feedback. You just can kind of hear, like, the sound that his microphone makes.
Just let me find something to die to. Find me a zombie or something. Please. It's still not daytime
Please.
either.
I beg.
How do you sleep?
He
You
just hit
click
rest.
on like a bed or couch or something and click rest.
Also, I think guns are made for killing people.
Not an option. It just says walk to, carpentry, or disassemble.
Are you tired?
Oh, no.
You don't need a rest.
My
Also, if
character
your,
is bored, though.
if your character's really bored or anxious, or if your character's like injured, sometimes they can't go to sleep.
I don't know how I feel about finding a mug of water just laying in the middle of the field.
Who left
Hey,
that?
dude. Wait, I
Probably
actually
me.
left that. Wait, dude, I actually left that there.
It's a
Mine
mug
now,
of
bitch.
urine.
Sweet. Sorry.
It's
Shove
actually
it all
full of
down.
bleach.
Oh, really?
Is there like no way to kill myself? Like, please just let me bash my own brains.
There's
out of the
endless
pool.
possibilities to kill yourself. All you have to do is...
I've been running for 12 hours straight. My character should logically be dead by now.
I'm so funny.
So far, I've been attacked by 3 hordes, and I've managed to come out of all 3 attacks
To be fair, unless you get unless you're boxed into a corner, you're relatively fine.
Yeah, that's
I like
true.
how drinking bleach does cure your thirst, but it also gives you 99 unhappiness.
It doesn't do any damage to either, so there's like no
I love the
downside.
idea of just like chugging down a thing of bleach and you're like, huh, I'm really sad now.
Wait, what
I mean, a happy person doesn't drink bleach.
No. No, a happy person
that a
does
quote.
drink
621 right there.
I don't know. A happy person does drink bleach, but it makes them into a sad person.
Gosh.
Speaking of drinking, let's get a Pepsi.
No.
Oh my god, my character's gonna die.
Add
Oh my
quote.
god,
I mean, happy people don't drink bleach. 2017.
What the fuck? The chat
What does that say?
log.
Yes, oh god, yes. Give it to me.
Hey, Daniel, do you have a like a kitchen knife or something?
I have a rubber band and some nails. We could probably MacGyver some shit.
You could make a fucking
I have a can
dog collar
opener.
with spikes on it.
Sandwiches.
We can make sandwiches.
Dude, I spawned
Wait, I
next
have
to
a
you.
saw. Would that work?
Dude, we spawned together.
I don't think a saw would work.
Really? Where are you?
No, I'm trying to.
Dude, I'm literally
Dead
walking
mouse. I
around
need
you.
to cut it up and
Oh, we need to amputate.
yeah.
My god.
Dude, I'm right next to you right now.
You sure? Cause I see a lot of zombies there, and I don't see a single you.
Well, there's a fucking guy here called the Mantithorn.
Sure, it's not a zombie.
No, it's not a zombie.
Oh, listen to that.
Fuck is that?
It's my vape bottle. I'm squeezing a little bit of juice that's in there. It makes a very disgusting sound.
And actually that, Stop. Stop.
Give me your shuckles. Ding.
Fries are done.
Hey,
And where's my French fries?
it's an
1
old
second,
story.
the dead mouse is in the microwave.
Code 622.
Oh shit, good.
I don't know how I feel about this game, but I do agree that it has some pretty good, very quotable.
1 sec, the dead mouse is in the microwave.
Honestly, I'd say this game has potential.
Welcome to Cooking with Andar.
I know one point that I had nothing at my house, food-wise, and then you sent me those fucking Snapchats. I was gonna send you a picture, like a half-eaten apple, and go, "This is all I have," but I didn't have an apple, so I couldn't do it.
So can I eat the cans?
Are you a goat?
Goats don't actually eat cans, noob.
I know, but fuck you.
Why did noob when you met my pet goat?
Hey, I'm no
you
longer
couldn't
depressed. All because I sat on a chair.
I think I found. Oh my god, I found where I died ages ago. Wow, I died here a long time ago.
I am in very
I
dangerous
gotta drop some
territory.
chicken soup on the ground. You want
Thanks
some?
for the 10. Yeah! Terry's in love with these emotes that fall from the sky.
Channel at my feet. There's chicken soup.
Chicken soup? Where'd you get that from, friend?
Well, I finally got hit.
Wait, is this the warehouse district the noob was talking about?
Wait, it says it's chicken or chili stir fry.
No, hit the the tiled floor icons that right
okay,
of that.
okay. I was about to say, it says it's uncooked. I was like, what are you trying to do to me? Thank you,
Did I
friend.
just find a prison? What the fuck is this? Oh my god, I found fucking walkie-talkies and I found cigarettes.
Yeah, I wish I could
This
find a
storage.
lighter right now. And
I
how
have a
pissed would you
lighter.
be if I just took that food you gave me and just poured it on the ground? Because that's apparently an option I could do.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
I
thanks
do
for the
that.
soup, Andar. Dump.
No soup for you.
Hey, that's a Seinfeld joke. I know
It
that.
is a
so I watch
Seinfeld joke.
Plus, no one here watches Seinfeld.
I've seen bits and pieces.
Have you watched? How did Office?
So I'm gonna fucking weapon this thing or else I'm fucked.
So is there
Find
like any
absolute
benefit to
dickwood
wearing
nails.
clothes in this game?
Not getting cold. Or...
Yeah, not getting cold.
So far, I haven't encountered that yet. I mean, I have no clothes right now. I guess I should go loot one of those zombies for theirs. Is that a good idea? Or would that, like, disease me?
Feeling sad.
What?
Taking a zombie's clothing.
I don't know.
I mean, considering they're both dirty and bloody. Okay, never mind.
Hey, Nemo, could you describe the warehouse district for me?
What do you mean?
Can you describe it?
Like, what's...
Wait, where is all my food gone?
In the warehouse I shot a shotgun in?
Yes.
It's like one of it's like a fucking... It's like a... Like, you know, you pay for per month. You ship something like, oh, I like...
Oh, son of a...
I think I found that earlier, Noob, or just
What
now.
happened, Andrew?
All my food's gone.
What happened to your food?
I was emptying frying pan, which normally goes into my inventory.
It's up on the floor.
I ate it.
But I can't pick it up off the floor.
I'm gonna get my character to start screaming. Hold on. I want to see if I can recreate that scream.
I know you'd love chili sitting in your pockets all day. Just loose chili.
Is there a way to like replace the glass in a window or reinforce it or something?
You can put
Yeah,
boards
some
down if you have
planks.
nails.
I do have nails.
And
Do I
you
need a
can-
hammer?
Yes. We'll just make a bunch of noise because all the zombies just left. That was weird.
Oh, you can actually put literally just a fucking dead mouse right on top of the fucking burner.
Sets the building on fire.
Stop it, you're fucking pushing me out.
Oh, my bad.
It's burning.
Oh, no, dead rat's burning.
Remember, houses can be set on fire.
It needs to happen faster.
How have I been alive for this long? I'm literally the only person who has not died yet.
How many days have you been alive for?
I've been
This
alive
whole
for
time,
about
basically?
6,
What does it say?
I think now.
Well, how do I check?
Hit
Alright,
your
character.
C. You go to info.
I'm not gonna do that. I think the hordes are getting bigger now.
Alright, I'm trying to
Also,
figure
for
out
some
what
reason,
building
I'm
we're in.
hearing an ominous tone. Bells.
It's me, baby.
That's part of that's actually a music that can play.
And remember in Daisy, the fucking those songs that I played would scare the shit out of us.
Yeah, the...
The one that's really...
I fucking know that scream, like the screaming one.
Ah, fuck, that hurt.
I felt 2 fucking feet and broke my fucking legs.
Alright, I'm gonna go to fuck to bed. I'll see you guys later.
See
Yeah, good night, man.
Yeah, peace out.
Hey, Andor, whenever it's daytime, I found some shit we can go scavenge.
So, I have planks, I have nails, I have a hammer. How do I put boards over a window?
Right click
Here's
it.
mine.
Okay. Carpentry?
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
there's a bar, like, right next to us. I'm on the quest for a fucking lighter. But maybe I can
Why
use
did you
this
can't
stuff.
light it off the fucking stove?
Maybe I can. No, I need lighter or matches. Bullshit. I haven't had a cigarette for 7 days.
Do I have to learn carpentry or skills or something? Because it's
Yeah.
not letting me build anything.
Yeah, you need to learn carpentry skills and have the materials and all that.
Okay, so I have all the materials but can't build anything. Crap. Do I have to find like a book? Like, how do you do this?
There are books. I currently have one for. I currently have several for is it carpentry for beginners,
Ding.
advanced carpentry, expert fishing, first aid for beginners. I should probably do first aid for beginners since I'm apparently dying. It's finally happened. My character is on edge for some reason.
Oh god.
Well, no wonder I'm on edge. The hordes keep getting bigger.
So I might have set this microwave to go for an hour.
Buildings can burn down.
Yeah, we know.
Really? I fucking
I
hate 'em.
right click on the microwave and it tells me to grab corpse. Oh, my corpse is done. Can't wait to dig in. I think it's about to be dawn. I think it's about to be dawn.
That's great. Cool, my fucking.
Are we living here forever now?
No, you just can't leave.
Well, that's not good.
What do pillows do?
They help you sleep tight. They make the bed bugs don't bite.
Alright, Grim, where are you?
Trailer park again.
So I was
I
just
tried
trying
to make a
drink
living
of
in the
Pepsi.
hotel that was nearby, but apparently the horde decided, oh, hey, this looks like a nice spot. Let's rent a couple rooms, order a couple margaritas. Yeah.
Look at that. Look at my shirt. Ah. It was green on my shirt, so it's going through the green screen. Where did I go? The world may never know. Surprise, I am back.
Back.
So putting stuff in my bag doesn't make it so I can carry more, does it?
Yes.
It's a backpack again.
Well, it's just a bag.
Yeah, bagging is just really won't.
I'm so bored right now, I'm just fucking around with my goddamn green screen.
That our window that they just smashed through?
I'm apparently far too gone. I'm probably not gonna make it.
Yep! Jimmo!
Oh, shit, ah. Sorry.
My character probably just needs lots of rest. And lots of...
The important thing is nobody was hurt. Yes, Terrence? What is it you have to tell me?
Terry, you should come in here and start reading. Oh,
Oh,
fucking
shit. There's another one.
Called
My Immortal.
My Immortal. You start reading that.
Oh shit, there's no one! Oh fuck, I just got bit.
What? The, what?
Was that a
The
dog?
fuck?
Was that? Yeah, that was a dog. Oh, is that the cue to let us know that dogs are gonna be appearing?
Please no.
Oh no.
Yeah, I can do without
Fucking-
dog.
Andrew, you're raping a girl in the bathroom.
She fucking raped me first.
It's been bloody in here. Her skirt's all dirty. Her shirt's all bloody. The fuck, Andor? Oh my god,
Well, at least
Terry
it's
donated
quiet
$1.
now.
Oh no, look at them go. They're all gone, so am I. Wait, I wonder if I can blend in with the emotes and make it look like I'm one of them. Christ, I'm autistic.
Yeah. I'm a hush puppy.
Hey, Alex. I look like a hush puppy. Oh no. I'll try to prepare a barrier.
Wait, how do you put things in a microwave?
How many Eva was
Slide
that?
it into the microwave.
You just drag it to there? Or at least, hey, I'm gonna try something out. I'm gonna see what happens. If this kills me, it'll be hilarious.
Thank you for the bits, Terrence.
I just turned the microwave on, there's some tuna in there.
What time is it?
In the can.
Hey, is it possible that it's daytime and we just don't know since we have all the curtains shut?
I don't know, open the door.
They can't, they're barricaded. Here, I'll go out one of the windows.
Hello, golf.
Oh, it's daytime.
Oh, no, but I might be. My health is going down. I have been administering first aid to myself, but...
Come on, Andor, I need to get some goddamn alcohol into me. It's been a long night for Daddy.
So I'm still in this rich neighborhood. I hear it sounds like an airplane, though.
That's probably a microwave. Oh shit, I forgot about the diner arcade thing. I saw this on the map and I wanted to check it out.
Okay, I thought you went through a window by pushing E, but that's just opening and closing it.
If you left click on the window, it should give you an option for it.
Open window. No, climb through. There we go.
Yes. Huh, I guess I really am stuck here until my injuries heal up.
Oh, I just found watering cans, farming, a bunch of seeds, a trowel.
Ooh, some
Did I just see premium toppings, or what the fuck did I just...
No.
Premium technology.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. You want some premium toppings for your pizza?
Oh, hey, I just found a...
Great small ass recipe you probably didn't think about. Imagine the apocalypse. Wouldn't you love it? Oh, okay.
I just found a bunch of bullets and a gun.
When I love the what?
I just died. Sorry, I just randomly died. Anyway, just think about the fact you never have pizza again.
Bullshit. Fucking Carol can make cookies. I'll make a fucking pizza out of the blood of my enemies. Nice tin can trail, Andor.
Thanks.
Fucking Jack and Jill, or is that Hansel and Gretel?
Yes.
Yes, my favorite fairy tale. Yes.
Never ends.
I'm gonna try and make it to the old house. I know for a fact I left some medical stuff there.
I have no idea
but
where
moving
any of
around
you
too
guys
much
are.
is fucking me up so bad.
So... Oh, I guess there's just no signal. So I can turn on the TV.
Well, switch the channels around. I know some of the radio stations still have signals.
I think it is this way.
Hey Jamal,
Yeah.
you can break your legs in this game.
Good. Good to know.
Hey Jamal,
mean,
you were so lucky. I promised you I would log off when I die, but I have not died a single time.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm surprised you and I have not died yet, actually.
But
Kill
I'm
me,
getting
my legs
there.
are broken. Kill
My
me.
character's health is half down. And all this movement to get to the old house for medical supplies is...
The rusty rifle.
I might be done, I think, with tonight.
Did you die?
No,
I mean, several times, actually.
Yeah, a lot. But maybe once I'll answer that question with, oh, that zombies jumped out the second story building and died.
Got some corn and an onion. An onion.
Ah, my
Found
body,
earbuds.
no.
Oh shit.
Jesus.
Ed, I might need
Yeah,
your help.
jump down. I mean, I'm still saying in chat, but I'm done for the night for that game.
Where did you go?
The back room.
Okay.
Yeah, I will
shit.
prefer to play more of it now.
Oh fuck!
Oh no. Oh no. Oh
Whoops,
no.
Whoops!
No.
Whoops!
Andrew, you fucked us.
Let's watch this. Let's see that happen.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. We're not doing shit here. Alright, I think I need to pull up my gun too. Get these guys off me. Oh my god, yes. Alright, so if we're going guns fucking blazing. Where's
God.
mine at? Where's my
Sorry, I
pistol?
got some bleach we can drink if it doesn't work out.
I can already see that being the next quote too.
What?
Don't worry, I've got some bleach we can drink if that doesn't work out. Fucking motherfucker.
I'm about to head into the woods and just die like a cat.
Jesus.
What? Did I just shoot myself?
Dead.
Did I just shoot myself?
What did you...
I'll watch this happen.
If you right click with the pistol, does that just pull it on yourself?
I hope not.
No, Andrew, don't kill me. Let me live. Oh, you've already killed me. Oh no, I'm still alive. Come here, Andrew,
Come
give
on.
me a kiss.
The rust.
Where's the bleach? Where's the bleach? Drink the bleach!
Jesus. Oh my god.
Okay, my character's getting depressed because he hasn't been around other people.
Not the self. If we play this game again, if we still keep
Don't
Andrew
play
server-
veteran, because don't use your fucking guns.
My zombie still lives too. If we go to the rusty rifle bar, and my zombies are in the top. Holy fuck. Alright.